Sort of coming chapter 1039. There are many guests at a table so we have to squeeze it. Qin Pingon sat between Xiaomi and Qin Lingjun, Qin Qinglu and Exin Jian sat on a bench, Jing Hao and Bai Deng and poor Yinlu didn't know what to do, but they were able to occupy a bench. Although Yinlu felt uncomfortable, he couldn't force anyone to sit beside him. He could only see that the young man in white with the name of Maniac was a jade pure realm sword immortal full of dragon spirit. The rest of Jing Hao, especially it was the two guests who arrived at Luopao Mountain later, but Yinlu couldn't see the depth. Since he couldn't see the other party's Taoism, it could explain the problem very well. Yinlu knew how much he weighed. Seeing the embarrassing situation of Yinlu, Zheng Dafeng held the tray with both hands and took the Taoist Xianwei into the seat. Yinlu still had some eyesight, so he hurriedly moved to the edge of the bench and let the doorman with the wooden hairpin and Taoist costume sit there. In the middle, the millet asked the good man mountain master with his eyes. Qin Pingon nodded with a smile. The little girl in black stood up and started to work. Zheng Dafeng pushed the plate to the millet, and she took out a handful of melon seeds from her sleeve and put it inside the plate. He opened the cotton satchel and poured 2 packets of dried fish wrapped in oil paper into the porcelain plate. Then Zheng Dafeng placed the plate in the middle of the table so that everyone could reach it. Not to mention the vast world, there are not many people in the whole world who dare to treat guests like this. Xiao Mo has persuaded Xiago to go away, to be precise, dragged away the sable-cap girl. Don't think that Bai Jing is only bluffing. If he really wants to fight, he will fight. Qin Pingon and Exin Jian smiled and said, Mr. Mei Qin, let's drink tea here first and then go up the mountain to drink and the place will be spacious. Exin Jian picked up the tea bowl and said with a smile, It's okay, it's very comfortable. Accustomed to the military career, coupled with his personality, Exin Jian has never been like the immortal master of Jing Hao. As soon as Jing Hao heard the name Mr. Mei Qin, her hands shook as soon as she picked up the bowl, and her heartstrings tensed instantly. There are not 1,000 or a few hundred scholars who have the name Haoran and the name Mei Qin, but who else can a Mr. Mei Qin, who can travel with Qin Xianjun to Luopao Mountain? Exin Jian glanced at Jing Hao, who had already guessed his identity, and said with a smile, On the way here my friend also talked to me about the ownership of Qinggong Mountain. I don't take it seriously. Of course this is your housework and I am one of them. Outsiders have no way of talking. Qin Pingon smiled knowingly. I remember that there were sages in the Confucian temple who commented on Exin Jian like this, and there were praises and criticisms in his words. Handsome talent swept across the sky, but when he was just wanton, no one dared to say that he was not at all. To put it simply, when he was leading the army to fight and rule the country and bring peace to the world, others should not make a fuss. Qin Lingjun's mind was not on the elegant young cultivator. He was busy winking with Qin Zhuolio. Good buddy, let's use tea instead of wine and go one by one. Qin Qinglu picked up the wine bowl and drank the tea with an aura of drinking water. Qin Lingjun drank it all in one go, wiped his mouth and sighed happily. Exin Jian picked up the dried brook fish, chewed it slowly and nodded, It's delicious. Millet scratched his face, smiled shyly, pointed his finger at the other kinds of dried creek fish on the plate. Mr. Mei Qin and the tiger on the ground, yellow spicy diced, they are all delicious. Exin Jian squinted and smiled and really stretched out his hand to pick up 2 dried fish from the stream again. Okay, I'll try them all. Millet Grains also squinted and smiled. Qin Pingon introduced with a smile. Mr. Mei Qin, her name is Zhou Mili, and she is the right protector of our Luopao Mountain. Exin Jian nodded and said, Listen to Zhuo Lu, it's good. This is what the mountain should look like. Personal opinion. Qin Qinglu had previously reminded Exin Jian that he is now a shabby scholar from Luzhou, Beiju called Qin Zhuolio. When he arrives at Luopao Mountain, don't miss out on Daoist Jinking's side. Out of the corner of Jing Hao's eyes, she found that Qin Lingjun, who had been grinning all the time, became more and more uncertain. Is it because he didn't know the weight of Mei Qin at all? Did he read less and had a big heart, or did he know it and didn't care? After all, this boy in Xingyi had brought Jing Hao too many surprises in the past few days, but any normal person seemed to be confused by Qin Lingjun. Qin Qinglu said with a smile, Jing Qing, do you still remember that I told you that there is a friend surnamed Exin, who will help you introduce him in the future? Qin Lingjun, who had long since taken off his boots and sat cross-legged, looked blank. Huh. Damn, we've had so many drinks and talked so much we forgot about it long ago, and I can't talk nonsense that I remember. Aren't you embarrassing me? Qin Qinglu raised his sleeves, put his fingers together, pointed to the white bowl on the table and said with a cipher, "Cup, come before Nilai." I didn't understand it if I said that earlier. I remember, why don't I remember? Qin Lingjun patted his knees, laughed loudly and gave a thumbs up to Mr. Meichin. "Brother Exen, there is a hand on the wine table, this is it. That is, sit far away or you have to pat your shoulders to show your respect." Exen Jian smiled and said, "Drink too high, don't take it seriously." Qin Lingjun burst into laughter, raised one hand, pushed the door open and was overjoyed. "Brother Qin also said that you are a normal drinker. Once you were drunk you pushed it with your hand and pushed it for a long time." Exen Jian laughed dumbly. As a result, the boy in Xingyi was slapped by his master. Qin Lingjun was annoyed and immediately restrained his smile. "Brother Exen, I'm not laughing at you, I can't keep my mouth shut when I drink, don't mind, my family doesn't speak two words." Millet reminded softly, Jingqing, you haven't had a drink yet." Qin Lingjun sighed after learning from his own master. "You don't understand now, Jianghu Erlang meeting by chance hit it off at first sight like drinking alcohol." Millet didn't want to refute Jingqing in public, but secretly frowned two pale and yellowish brows, held the white bowl in both hands and drank tea with her head down. Qin Lingjun knew that he had said the wrong thing, so he quickly changed his tune, turned his head and put his hand to cover his mouth and said in a low voice, "Xiaoli, he'll help you find 10 riddles later." Millet grinned and hurriedly lowered her head. Exen Jian glanced at the Taoist priest Xianwei who was just drinking tea for himself, and then looked at Qin Pingon. Qin Pingon nodded lightly. Jing Hao was speechless for a long time. The old monk has attended thousands of ceremonies and banquets in his life, but he has never encountered such a trivial wine bureau. Opposite the table is the dragon slayer. Bai Deng has reached the extreme as an enemy, and he has not recovered until now. Drinking tea at the same table with an enemy who killed dragons where there are dragons in the world is a situation that Bai Deng could not even imagine. As for Yinlu, it is even less clear that he, the former deputy city owner of Xianzhu City, and the Taoist priest Xianwei sitting next to him are the real owner of the Xianzhu City, and the owner of the Taoist hairpin left in the world. After drinking tea we divided into two groups. Qin Pingon and Xiaomi Mili were responsible for taking Exan Jian around the mountain, and went to Jilin Peak of Zhoushan to take a look. As for Qin Qinglu, they followed Qin Lingjun to the nearby Jisa Peak for a drink. A white-haired boy never came to the table, just squatted at the gate of the mountain, took out a booklet and began to record the year, month, day and so on. Walking on the mountain road of Jilin Peak where Zhoushan is located. Exen Jian took the initiative to say, "This time the Confucian temple was sealed with the 5 sacred mountain monarchs of Treasure Pingzhou. It was not the Yaxing, Wenxing or the Confucian temple leader or Shuigong's abbot for the ceremony, but the 5 disciples of the most holy master came forward. Their current posture is somewhat similar to yours now. One of them, this time I showed up in the wild world, is a beloved disciple of the most holy master who made no secret of his partiality. There is also the one from the outer world. I heard Qin Qinglu say that you followed Li Xing to stop the wild world. You may have met. Long ago he was the accountant of those ancient scholars. In addition to his difficult studies he was also responsible for managing and earning money." Qin Pingon was stunned and nodded. "I just had a face-to-face meeting." At that time the younger generation failed to recognize the identity of the sage. If he had known the identity of the other party earlier in Qin Lingjun's wine table jargon, it would have been a few words high and low. On the wild land where the spiritual energy was thin, there were 2 people living next to each other. Before leaving the dojo, the bearded man found an iron sword, a high crown, put on a Confucian shirt and was holding a sword. Exen Jian gathered 3,000 pieces for a while, took off a long sword from the wall, and rushed to the wild hinterland together with his friends. Qin Pingon asked with a smile, "Mr. Meichin, after drinking later, can this junior ask you for a copybook?" Exen Jian shook his head and said, "Master Qin, it's okay to drink." When we arrived at the Bayou Square outside the Patriarch's Hall of Jilin Peak, the mountains and rivers were picturesque, and Exen Jian leaned on the railing and overlooked the magnificent scene. Xiaomi found that the good man mountain master seemed to be waiting for something, and when the Mr. Meichin moved silently, the good man mountain master looked a little disappointed. "Got it, the good man mountain master wants to fight poetry?" Oh, Wei Shanjun said, "The limericks of the good man Shanju are a must." They went along the mountain road to Jisa Peak. Qin Pingon was too embarrassed to take Xianxia to his study in the bamboo building. Zhou Xian came forward and helped the mountain owner entertain rare guests together. The wind blows through the courtyard, and the iron horses under the eaves make a neighing sound. Xianxia, who had previously said that he did not drink alcohol, said with a stern face after the apron-wearing old cook served a few plates of appetizers, "I don't need the immortal brewing on the mountain, the market is fine. Except for the millet-nibbling melon seeds, all of them got a little drunk." Xianxia asked with a smile, "Is the content of that copybook reviewing old words from old papers, or improvising new words?" Qin Pingon was a little embarrassed. "Doesn't this mean that you can have both old and new words? Just the trivial matter of grabbing an extra blank rice paper." Xianxia, after all, was not familiar with the temperament of the second shopkeeper of the wine shop, so he said to himself, "Then the old words are fine." Qin Pingon smiled and said, "One sentence is enough." Xianxia wondered, "Which sentence?" Qin Pingon smiled and looked at Xiaomi and made a gesture of holding a cup in one hand and twisting his wrist with the other hand like a riddle. After thinking for a while, Xiaomi understood the answer and immediately raised his hand. I know, the good man Shanju hopes to be beautiful. Mr. Qin writes down a sentence, just 6 words. The dragon in the word Xianxia. It's really written too many wonderful and well-known words, which can be both heroic and graceful." The grain of millet moistened his throat, straightened his waist and gave the answer aloud. "Look at the sword while drunk." Xianxia was silent for a moment, then said with a smile, "Then please trouble Mr. Zhu to cook 2 more dishes and 2 more jars of wine." Qin Lingjun was refreshed and brought his old and new friends to drink in his house, which was a rare opportunity. "Before climbing the mountain I had a few words with Jing Dafeng, and asked him to say a few good words to Wei Shanjun and ask for a few jars of Xianxia wine. Side purchase. Brother Dafeng is usually unreliable and he is still very reliable at critical moments." He nodded and agreed, saying that he would carry the burden and personally deliver it to Uncle Qin, guaranteeing that it is a good wine, and it must be collected by the Piyun Mountain Ritual Division. Years of wine brewing on the mountain. That is to say, there are friends present. Otherwise Qin Lingjun would have to knock his legs and rub shoulders for Brother Dafeng. Walking on the mountain road, Qin Lingjun flung his sleeves up. Qin Lingjun was really happy because he saw Qin Zhuolio and took pictures from time to time. With a pat on Qin Zhuolio's sleeve, "Tiskei, this tendon is sturdy." Brother Dafeng said it well. "The young man has a lot of firepower and his can make a pie. I just don't know that Brother Qin, who was a family 500 years ago, has found a wife now. It is unlikely that he has no money in his pocket, and his waist is not hard. With a pair of colorful leather bags he deceives those who like talents and beauties at the foot of the mountain. The little girl in the novel is all right, but in the mountains she is not very popular. Unless. Looks like Chief Zhou and me Xianxian. As for the old cook, it is normal to be sloppy and be a bachelor. Although they are friends, deep down in Qin Lingjun's heart, there is still a clear distance between them. Qin Zhuolio, Brother Jia Bai Busy, the water brother of Yujiang, Li Yuan Ho of Jidu Longting and others, they are all the best friends in Qin Lingjun's heart. As for Senior Jing and fellow Daoist Bai Deng, after all they just met and they have to see how they drink at the table. After a long time outside the table they see people's hearts. In any case, the more they drink the more friends they have. Qin Qinglu squinted at Jing Hao, who was walking on Qin Lingjun's right hand, and said with a heartfelt smile, "Meet again." This Jing Hao is still a little brainy, knowing that he took the initiative to come here to visit Qin Lingjun. Jing Hao didn't dare to reveal his mountain connection with Qin Xianjun at all, so he could only answer in his heart, "Junior never thought that I would be able to meet Qin Xianjun here again, and I am more than happy." Qin Qinglu twitched the corners of his mouth, seeing how this fellow was not pleasing to the eye, so he began to sprinkle salt on Jing Hao's wound. "It's okay to admit counseling on the left and right sides. Qin Pingon is just a little Yuan Ing of the 10 realms now. You are a cultivator of the Ascension realm and you are still at a distance. Hehe, the realm is not high and the tone is so loud, can you bear it?" Jing Hao hesitated. "I really want to tell the truth, Senior, I can do it." Jian Kai Tuyue Mountain, a city head inscriber who was not confused. "Don't say that the fall is nascent soul, that is, Qin Pingon has no cultivation base at all. Jing Hao is in other people's territory and I listened to a few strange words of yin and yang. What is it?" Qin Qinglu sneered. "It's just that there are 2 more Ascension swordsmen from the demon clan around. What are you afraid of? You didn't take the initiative to provoke Luopao Mountain. Do they dare to kill you with a sword? It's really a Confucian temple rule." Is it a decoration? Why, I have been lying on the mountain for a long time and I have cultivated a turtle method. When I can shrink my head, I will shrink my head. Jinghao was silent. I was afraid that I would open my mouth and say something tough. As a result, Qin Xianjun turned around and sold himself, so there is really no need to leave Luopa Mountain today. I couldn't believe it before, but now it was revealed by Qin Xianjun. Jinghao's heart trembled, and it really was two ascension realms, Jianxiu. The key is that they are from the Wild Demon clan. It is necessary to know that the Wild Ascension Realm monster and the other Ascension Realm monks in the rest of the world cannot be treated in general. This is a fact recognized on the mountain. Jinghao glanced at the boy and Xingyi next to him. Thanks to this one, he had the chance to go up the mountain. He was unable to participate in the discussions at the Confucian Temple in China, but he was able to drink a glass of wine in Luopao Mountain. If this spread out, the reputation of Qinggong Mountain could be saved a lot. Qin Lingjun noticed the expressions of Qin Zhuoliu and Jinghao, and asked suspiciously, "Sneaky, what are you talking about?" Qin Qinglu smiled and said, "I dare to talk to Immortal Master Jing a few words casually. I am afraid that there is something wrong in what I said, and if I accidentally touch the reverse scale of the predecessors, I will be angry with me." Jinghao is self-aware but unspeakable. Only Qin Lingjun, who was kept in the dark, was still trying to smooth things over there and persuaded bitterly, "Don't be like this, we are all friends. We haven't even got to the table to drink, so you say such hurtful words? It's not good. Listen. Mine, hold back, drink and chat again. There is no seniority at the wine table." At the same time, the boy in Xingyi reminded Qin Zhuoliu in his heart, "What's the matter? Didn't I tell you about the identity and background of Immortal Master Jing before? Don't speak bluntly in front of seniors like Jinghao. The Ascension Realm cultivator has his own temper. Listen to me, don't be so rushed when you talk." Qin Qinglu said in a heartfelt voice, "I thought I had a great cultivator on the mountain like Jinghao as a friend, and I forgot about my old friend who was too embarrassing to go out to drink." Qin Lingjun couldn't stand this the most and was a little annoyed. He glared and said to himself, "You can't tell the difference, you are the one who bullshit. I'll punish myself for 3 bowls later, you remember to keep up." After hesitating for a moment, Qin Lingjun was still worried that Qin Zhuoliu had a bad temper and liked the book business. "I know how difficult it is to wander around the world alone. You are not very skilled, you are the best face, I also know. So there are some hypocritical things. Why do you want me to do me a favor and help you arrange a place to stay in the Beiyue realm? I will not mention it, but if you want to talk about the money of the gods, it is an external thing. After the buddies separated, I still saved some over the years. You can take them all." I agreed in advance. "I will divide it into 2 parts, one for you and the other for the same good brothers. I don't have many friends, I don't have a lot of money in my pocket, and I like to be the uncle, and it's only the 2 of you. Don't think I talk too much and don't be embarrassed. Whoever we are with whom, the hard-hitting friendship is there, so if you encounter difficulties I will give you both the money. It's enough to save the money again. It's not bad for him to keep it. If the money is not enough, I'll borrow it from someone. I'm not bragging. I'm here on Luopa Mountain. It's just a small matter of a sentence and you don't need to owe any favors. Wei Shanjun of Pai Yunshan is the one who likes to hold night banquets. With me, that's only a good buddy who didn't cut the chicken's head and burn the yellow paper. Tell it yourself. Look, since my money is your money or something, it's a thing? It's definitely not a thing. Also, I just said that if you encounter something that can't be solved by spending money, don't hide it with me today. If you can't do it, look down on me. If you say a word, I will accompany you to leave Luopa Mountain. It doesn't matter if you go to Beiju Luzhou. I have a lot of friends in the mountains over there and they are all things. I used to think that you are a high-spirited fellow. No matter how poor you are still a scholar. I may not like to hear this, so I am not willing to show you the incense that thieves can scare people when they say it." Speaking of which, Qin Lingjun patted his friend's arm lightly, hesitated for a while and said softly, "I know that when I ask someone for mercy, no matter how good the relationship is, the heart will still feel uncomfortable. Maybe the better the relationship, the more uncomfortable it is. It's all right, we'll be at the wine table later, we too have a good drink." Qin Lingjun felt that he was not a fool, and that he had not really encountered difficulties. With the stubborn temper of a pauper like Qin Zhuoliu, he would never travel thousands of miles across continents to come to Luopa Mountain to see him. No matter what others are like anyway, Qin Lingjun always felt that the most difficult thing in the world is to ask a friend a favor which will make friends feel embarrassed. Qin Qinglu smiled and stretched out his hand to hold the Tsing-Yi boy's head. Qin Lingjun slapped the guy's palm off with a slap and said angrily, I'm here with you and am almost moved by talking. You're good, no big or small, am looking for a drink. Why don't you feel moved, brother? Am also very moved. Ha, then cry for your brother, hurry up. Bai Deng, who only dared to silently follow behind them, was swaying with his legs at the moment. This boy in Tsingy really dared to talk. Does he really not know how the word, death, is written? Qin Qinglu noticed the flow of his heart, turned his head and smiled. Little guy, that's all you want to see your ancestors? Bai Deng was full of sweat and was speechless. As the son of a dragon, he has to drink at the same table as a dragon slayer. Those who shouldn't go out of the mountains really shouldn't go out of the mountains to go outside the mountains. Pushing open the door, which was never locked, Qin Lingjun led a few friends to take a seat at the wine table in the main hall. Soon Jing Dafeng brought a load of drinks, followed by a pink skirt girl with a pastry box and a fruit bamboo basket. Qin Wanshu gave everyone a blessing, put the cakes and fruits on the table and said, the immortal masters will wait a moment, and the drinks will be delivered immediately. Qin Lingjun was full of embarrassment. Qin Wanshu glanced at Qin Lingjun and said softly, treat your guests well. Qin Lingjun didn't even dare to look at her, just nodded vigorously. In Luopao Mountain, apart from the old cook, Qin Wanshu's cooking skills are not bad, not to mention that she has learned a few good dishes from the old cook. The smart Qin Wanshu went to the kitchen of his house and soon brought a large food box here, with 7 or 8 kinds of wine and vegetables, full of color, fragrance and taste. Leaving the house, she gently closed the door. Soon the drink started and the boy in Tsingyi's voice was so loud that he seemed to be punching with his friends. She didn't even have to look, she knew that Qin Lingjun was standing on the bench. Jing Dafeng waited outside and asked with a smile, aren't you angry? Qin Wanshu shook his head gently and said with a smile, he is rarely busy with business, so how can he be angry? Jing Dafeng began to complain, I heard that at the foot of the mountain in the town, Qin Lingjun had several morning drinks. Qin Wanshu raised his brows and bit his lip, I'm too lazy to care about him. At the wine table, after punishing himself for 3 bowls, Qin Lingjun was already standing on the stool, shaking his hands, brother, my heart is connected. Qin Qinglu shook his hands and laughed, I'm using my brother's brains. I'm afraid that my brother will have a hard time, and I will do nothing when my brother beats me. Listening to these nonsense drinking words, Jing Hao and Bai Deng could only stare at the side. Qin Lingjun and Qin Qinglu started boxing in the small town dialect. The 2 brothers are good, the 5th leader Lulu Shan. Qin Xianjun in the blue shirt was at a loss to look around at the book and sword, but he couldn't do it and he paid 100,000 things for 2 or 3 cups. After 3,000 years, a sword swept across the sky, flew over the vast Dongting, and then crossed the ancient Shu Wanqingshan and came here again not to kill the dragon, but to be full of drunkenness with close friends and to compete with wine. On the border between Yuzhou and Hongzhou, on an official road to Yuzhong County, 3 plainly decorated carriages are inconspicuous. In the middle of a carriage, the Emperor Song He and the Queen Song Mian, all dressed in civilian clothes, sat side by side in the carriage. She lifted the curtain from time to time to enjoy the scenery along the way outside. In the carriage at the end, Zhao Yao, the servant of the Ministry of Punishment, and Li Baozhen, the first official of the Weaving Bureau of Yuzhou who came halfway, were from the 4th grade. One is a hot Beijing official, and the other is a local official on the fringes of officialdom. Li Baozhen smiled and said, with your light I can sit and hurry. Zhao Yu smiled and said, I still have to thank His Majesty's approachable people so that we don't have to pay attention to those red tapes. Li Baozhen clicked his tongue. Zhao Yao smiled and dismissed it. Although the relationship between the 2 parties was close, he still had to say a few official words. They are real old acquaintances and they are all children of big families in Fulu Street, Huaihuang County. Over the years, Zhao Yao and Li Baozhen have been in correspondence with each other. Li Baozhen said in his heart, I heard that the great court meeting in the capital, led by Yuan Jingding, suggested moving the capital? If Li really moved the capital to the current capital of Luojing, for a certain feudal lord who is now in the wild, it would really be the bottom of the pile. Get paid. The first Hujun of Shujian Lake was Xia Fan, a heroic spirit of the Dali court, and Wu Guanqi, an assistant officer who used to be in charge of the intelligence collection and sorting of the Dali court in the central part of Yizhou, and Li Baozhen, who was in charge of intelligence in the southeast. Colleagues with equal authority. The Dali Song clan is recognized as having 3 official offices, the capital city and the Xianxia dynasty composed of localities, the second official office composed of various gods, and the third official office is the Longquan County Kiln Supervision and Construction Bureau, Yuzhou Weaving Bureau and Hangzhou Logging Bureau. These are institutions whose chief officials are not high in rank, but every chief official is a well-deserved emperor. Of course, Lin Jingqing, the Logging Institute, is probably the only exception. Zhao Yu glanced at Li Baozhen, smiled and said nothing. Li Baozhen leaned his head against the wall of the car and pointed at Zhao Yao. You guy, you like to talk in your stomach since you were a child. In terms of official fortune, Li Baozhen, who is a fourth-rank official, is naturally far inferior to Zhao Yao, a fellow countryman who was promoted by His Majesty as a minister of the Ministry of Punishment. The younger generation who went out of the small town did not talk about cultivating and becoming on the mountain, but Zhao Yao was the most successful official. But if we only talk about the territory of Yuzhou, the top officials are of course the governor and the general of Yuzhou. Neither of them can control the Weaving Bureau and Li Baozhen, but Li Baozhen and the Weaving Bureau can make the two military and political officials in the frontiers sleep uneasy. Because Yuzhou is an important military town and a battleground for military strategists, Cao Mao, the general of Yuzhou, is also in charge of the military affairs of Hangzhou next door. Cao Mao was not qualified to take a car at this moment, so he could only follow a group of cultivators who followed the army and rode ahead to clear the way. When Li Baozhen went to Yuzhou Weaving Bureau to take office, Li Baozhen brought two henchmen, both surnamed Zhu, father and daughter. At this moment, Zhu He and Zhu Lu were riding horses behind, following the convoy from a distance. The empress asked in a low voice, "Where is Yu? Song He smiled and patted the back of her hand, comforting, "Don't worry, this clan elder of yours just looks weak and doesn't speak well. Although she is young, she is actually very smart. Otherwise, how would she become an earthly branch cultivator?" The military master behind the scenes. In the headed carriage, a woman and a girl sat opposite each other, and the little girl kept gazing at the bead on the woman's hand. "You are the Empress Dowager of a country. She has a graceful air and doesn't care about it." She raised her white lotus-like wrist, shook her bracelet and asked with a smile, "Do you recognize me?" The girl shook her head and said something strange, "You must pretend that you don't know each other even if you haven't seen it before." Nanzhan knew the character of this little girl very well. She looked careless, but Yenner was actually bad, so she continued to ask, "There is no such thing in the Yu family's collection, nor is there anything in our Daoist treasure house of B characters?" The Yu clan of the Shangzhou kingdom was not visible in the officialdom of Dali, but only in name, only in charge of the silk and tea services of the local official camp. However, aside from the first-class surnames of the Yuan Caoguan family, not to mention the face, just talking about the background and the inside, the Yu family is actually similar to the Tianshui Zhao family and the Zizhaoyan family, but the Fufeng Qiu family and the Poyang Ma family are not as good as the Yu family, but the inside story is really just the inside story. Few Dali officials dare to say that they understand the context and depth of it. As for the treasure house of the B character of the Dali court, it is a strictly forbidden place, and it is a woman with such an identity. Yu Ye's face was complicated and she shook her head vigorously. "There's no way. Tui Guosher has beaten a few of us and no one is allowed to use this thing. Otherwise even the memory of this life will be erased and become an idiot. Listening to Yuan Huajing earlier, there was a poor who didn't listen to me, an elder who belonged to the cultivator of the earth branch and was my senior just because he found a bead in private, and then he was cleaned up by Tui Guosher himself and the end was miserable." The little girl patted the Su waist card. "It was originally his thing and I belonged to fill in the vacancy. If he did not know the reason, I would still be learning female red embroidery at home." Nanzhan pretended to hear about this and smiled. "You are a monk of the military family. Even if you don't take the place of this person's earthly branch, you will go to Zhenwu Mountain or Fengxue Temple to cultivate." Nanzhan joked. "The position of our Grand Master has been vacant for several years now, so you don't have to be so nervous, not to mention that Tui Guosher has always placed great importance on you and has high expectations." The little girl sighed and said pitifully, "In officialdom I also understand the principle of one emperor and one courtier, but the problem is that Tui Guosher is gone, and he still has a hidden officer and junior brother who has returned home. Empress Dowager, don't you? I know the few of us were taught a few times to the death by that hidden official in the capital, and they were cleaned up by him." Nanzhan's face turned pale in an instant, but it wasn't Yu Ye's words that he was outrageous, and that he had committed some taboo in the officialdom, But now the woman had a headache when she heard the name of the hidden official. Seeing that things were not good, Yu Yu immediately shut up obediently. Nanzhan subconsciously rubbed the bead string on his hand, his face uncertain. Yu Yu knew that Qin Pingon once walked into the palace, but what happened even if she was a monk of the Earth branch she still didn't know. To be able to pretend that you don't know something you shouldn't know is a science. The last time Qin Pingon took Xiao Emo to the palace to meet the Queen Mother Nanzhuang, the reason was to ask Lu Jiang for the shards of lifelike porcelain. At that time, the woman wore this string of bracelets secretly made on the mountain, and each bead was a priceless spiritual rhinoceros bead. And this kind of orb because it can make people remember the memories of the past life. One is the first life. The Qi practitioner sits down according to the Daoist formula, rubbing the bead, a mustard seed to restrain the mind. You can get a clear understanding of the time and overcome the restrictions of time. The body is like a colorful phoenix flying with wings, and the mind is in a picture book that records the picture scroll of the past life. The scene of the past life is deeply remembered and the picture scroll on that page will be colorful, no different from the truth. Some people with shallow memory, a picture scroll, the colors faded along with it, the memory was blurred and the picture was dry and inky, leaving only an outline. Nanzhan let out a faint sigh and squeezed out a smile, but when she thought of this trip to Lijing, it was very likely that she would meet that in Mud Bottle Alley who was going to run wild, and her face turned gloomy again. Almost any sect with a deep foundation will always have this item. Even Bai Yujing is no exception. The purpose is to be able to free some soldiers from the ancestors of the world, and to find a needle in a haystack, to find this life from the vast world of red dust, and then to bring them back to the mountain to renew the path. Jiang Zhaoma of the Ziki building in Baiyujing and Yu Xen of Tongye sect were all in this situation. Therefore the Lingxi pearl has always been a rare existence with a price and no market. Once it appears in the world, it is the cultivator that must compete for it. Therefore such treasures on the mountain, no matter who keeps them in their hands, are well prepared and will never be useless. Because those immortal mansions that have no such thing in their own treasury, no matter whether they are unlucky or have no money, when they urgently need a rhinoceros bead to help a certain ancestor get enlightened, they have to ask the sect with the rhinoceros bead. The importance of incense on the mountain. As for the bracelet of the southern hairpin, there are as many as 12 rhinoceros beads strung together. Except for the few used by her, most of the other jewels that contained memories were previously consumed by the unfamiliar squire beside Qin Pingon with a sharp sword light, and they were reduced to rubbish. But Nanzhuang is also not sure about it. It seems that 2 of the rhinoceros pearls, although they are also dim, seem to be restricted by the unfamiliar, using a kind of swordsmanship. With a jewel, what I remember is only a part of the personnel affairs of the previous life. Those are those pictures that are relatively unforgettable and clear in memory. If you were a man of Taoism in your previous life, you will encounter and pass through the practice pass, with the help of the rhinoceros bead. Naturally, it will not be forgotten, so this move can become a shortcut to mountaineering without sequelae. The old coachman who drove for the Queen Mother Dali all these years reminded in his heart. You have to be careful of the demons you encounter at the bottleneck of Yuanyingjing. If it's really that Qin, you won't even think about entering the Jade Pure realm in your life. The real identity of the old coachman is an ancient god, the chief officer of the Thunder Department. The old man continued. In the heart all kinds of demons are born. When the heart is destroyed, all kinds of demons are destroyed. Nanzhan's eyes lit up and smiled. Thank you, senior, for reminding me. The old man said, it's nothing, it's a sentence written on a novel of ghosts and monsters. I saw it and thought it made some sense. It was very popular in the Yamashita market in the early years and the price is still cheap. This travelogue is poor. Nanpin resisted the urge to curse. You turned into that silly look again. Nanzhan noticed the dignified atmosphere in the carriage and packed up his complicated thoughts, seemingly casually asking, you are all looking for suitable treasures from the B character secret vault. If I remember correctly, are there any problems with those? The Xingbu of the card is dedicated to the monks, and with their military merit, they can exchange for the equivalent treasures with the Xingbu. The officials of the Xingbu are all selected from the treasure house of the C character, which has a relatively low rank and is piled up into mountains. Logically speaking, there must be a more hidden A character library. Yu looked at the Empress Dowager with a playful expression. Nanzhan knew that he had lost his words. When I didn't ask. Yu grinned. The Empress Dowager, there's nothing you can't say about this matter, it's not taboo. Cui Guosher once told me that if anyone asks her face to face in the future, she'll tell her the answer. Nan Zhan's face was pale and colorless. Thanks to the woman's fair skin, she was not so conspicuous. Yu pointed to herself, then pointed to the woman, and then gave the answer. The character library of the Dali dynasty is me, you, us, all the monks of the earthly branch where the Empress Dowager is located. A member of the Song clan of Dali, he is a genealogy cultivator on all the mountains, a mountain and water god, and even more. After pausing for a moment, the little girl's eyes were firm and she said solemnly, moreover, it is a detailed record of every yellow book of the Dali dynasty's household registration, every ordinary person of the Dali dynasty. It is a detailed record of every fish scale book of the cadaster. An inch of the land of the mountains and rivers of Li. Nan Zhan was silent. Yu smiled and exhaled softly, and the girl began to close her eyes to rest. Aha, I'm just learning to speak from the national teacher Cui Yu and I'm so tired. In Piyun Mountain, where the pine shade is rich, Shanjun Wei Bo closed the very heavy booklet, rested his cheek with one hand, and tapped the golden earring beside his ear with his thumb, hesitating about making up his own name. One of the vassal hilltops of Luopao Mountain by Jiantai, Xiaomo is a little relieved. Xiago is whispering with the white-haired boy who is the editor of the genealogy and Guizhujiu whom they regard as the leader of the alliance, as if they are together discuss big things. As for the provocation at the gate of the mountain, Xiago has completely forgotten about it as if nothing happened. Xiao Imo moved slightly in his heart and walked away. In the capital of Dali, a young monk named Xing Yi, the young head of the Wudao sect, planned to follow Mr. Chen's instructions in the letter and go to a Xianxia inn where it was said that he would not have to pay for his name. And then go to the alley outside the building and find a pair of masters and apprentices named Lu Jia and Zhao Duanming. In the old cook's house, Qin Pingon, who had been drinking and swaying, only took Xiao Imo, quietly left Luopao Mountain, and came to the ancestral house in Mupin Lane in the small town. Sort of coming Chapter 1040. Qin Pingon stood in the alley outside the ancestral house and looked at the houses next door on both sides. Xiao Imo knew it in his heart and asked, "Young master, are the shards of life porcelain hidden nearby?" Qin Pingon nodded and smiled. "I just don't know if it's in the house on the left or the right. It's well hidden, it's really close to the horizon." On the Hangzhou border, the team stopped at a post station. Because they were officials, they had official duties. The post station had its own arrangements. Just follow the rules and follow the rules. Orderly and orderly, a dozen officials stayed here in an orderly manner. Blocked Caoza Station. If the official acquaintances are staying and want to sleep well, the official guest rooms of the post station are very particular, and you have to stay according to the official position from top to bottom. If it is full, you want to cut the queue and so on. But if you want to eat well, there is no problem. For example, Yicheng can pay out of his own pocket, ask the cook to open a small stove and make a sumptuous banquet. This kind of thing is not illegal. The good law of the country is not just strict, but must be reasonable, which has always been repeatedly emphasized by the national teacher Cui Yu. Entering the official house, Emperor Song he reached out and wiped the tabletop, raised his hand, there was no dust, then went to the windowsill, wiped it lightly, it was still clean and dust-free, and smiled. "In the past, Mr. Guan questioned, Mr. Master, you manage big things well, this is your ability, but those small things are too much and too meticulous. It is not right, you can't trust the 6 government offices?" Song he rubbed his thumb and forefinger lightly. It turns out that the little things that Mr. has repeatedly scrutinized and made fine adjustments have been well managed by Mr. over time. The embroidered tiger Cui Yu, in addition to the national teacher Dali, is actually the mentor of Song He. To a certain extent, Wu Yuan and His Majesty the Emperor are brothers of the same context. It's just that they belong to the same lineage and have nothing to do with the lineage of Wenxing. Yu Mian lowered his voice and asked curiously, "Your Majesty, you haven't said yet, how did the national teacher answer Mr. Guan?" Song He smiled and said, "I remember that Mr. just replied, I can trust your intentions and original intentions, but not your methods and tenacity." That's the sentence that made our old man choke to death. Beside the post station stables, the old coachman looked at the young Daoist priest sitting on the railing. The old man felt powerless, and just as he was about to speak, the Daoist priest wearing the lotus crown made a gesture of wiping his mouth with his fingers, signaling the other person not to speak. Lu Chen put his hands on the railing and said with a smile, "Put 100 and 1,000 hearts, Pindao is not looking for you to reminisce but someone else. The old man hesitated for a moment and had a guess. Lu Chen immediately stretched out his thumb and shook his hands again. Senior deserves to be the top spot of Lei Bus Zhangkan division, and the junior admires it. The old man smiled and said, it would be best for Headmaster Lu to take her away, just to have some fun for the surname Chen. In the future it will be interesting for two fellow villagers to meet again in a foreign land, and the enemy's family will meet with special jealousy. Lu Chen has set up a fortune-telling booth in Lizidongshan for more than 10 years, and they are no strangers to each other. Poor Lu Wei, he is still a fairy in the Yinyang family. Lu Chen complained, if we agreed not to chat, what happened to the senior? The old man smiled heartily. Master Lu is a very talkative person, so I don't care about that. Lu Chen's eyes were filled with resentment. So you can bully the talkative people one by one, right? The old man shook his head. 10 years in the town, with a flick of the fingers of the Qi practitioners on the mountain, Master Lu and I can get together and break up. She's here, so I won't delay Master Lu and Master Lu to reminisce about the old days. The old man left here. A father and daughter came with a horse. Lu Chen moved his butt, landed on the ground, waved vigorously with the father and daughter and shouted diligently, here and here. Of course I used some tricks to make myself look less young. In a Liang's words, it is more like a mature man's vicissitudes. Zhu He felt that the smiling middle-aged Taoist priest looked a little familiar. The Taoist hurriedly gestured a few times and finally made a gesture of shaking the fortune teller and said with a smile, do you remember? Me, the one who set up a stall on the main street in Huaihuang County. Zhu He's face was full of surprise and he said with a smile, Master Lu? Zhu Lu actually recognized the other at a glance, but she still pretended not to recognize this fortune teller. The father and daughter both went to the stall for fortune-telling in the small town, but they were different. One wanted to know when their daughter was going to be fortune, and the other was to measure their marriage. Lu Chen smiled and said, your name is Zhu He, right? Brother Zhu, Pindao has a friend and asked Pindao to ask you a question. Although Zhu He was a little confused, he still laughed heartily. Master Lu, please speak. Lu Chen smiled and said, he just wanted to know one thing. How did you make Qin Pingon think that you were a master on the study tour when you left the town? My friend, talking about this question is completely incomprehensible. It has puzzled him for years. He was confused. What with what? Why is he a master and what does he have to do with this Daoist Lu's friend? Zhu Lu's face was gloomy. She put her arms around her chest, subconsciously making a defensive gesture, wanting to see what medicine the gourd was selling today, the fortune teller who made her a bad impression back then. In the weaving bureau, Zhu He is the nominal second in command, second only to Mr. Li Jizao. Zhu He is in charge of a large group of subordinate craftsmen, including the official and the chief master, and is responsible for helping the chief official to keep an eye on the specific weaving of large and small affairs. His current status is somewhat similar to that of Lin Jingqing, the assistant officer of his hometown kiln supervision and construction department, so Zhu He is already in a state of idle retirement. Daughter Zhu Lu is quite different. All the money and grain, government administration and scholar association activities in a state will be secretly recorded in the book. The group of people she manages belong to the veritable eating imperial food, but they do not pass the Ministry of Household, and the secret folds that the Weaving Bureau regularly submitted to the imperial study in the capital were almost all from her hands, and Li Baozhen, the weaving officer, was only in charge of polishing the brush. Lu Chen leaned his back against the railing and smiled at them. Zhu He, who is nearly 60 years old, has spent many years in the Golden Realm, and is expected to enter the distant travel realm. Zhu Lu just became a 6th-level martial artist this year. If he doesn't show up according to their son's arrangement and paving the way, or according to the established path of life, when Zhu He becomes the master of the distant travel realm, he will be transferred to the local military attaché. Zhu He of course prefers to go to the south in a small country other than Dali, to establish a sect and collect disciples to teach martial arts. As for Zhu Lu, she will break through the realm step by step and then one day she will die at the height of the martial Dao level of the distant travel realm, and she will complain and be unhappy. On the road of her life, there are always two figures in front of her. One is the sweetheart who seems to be close at hand but can never be asked for, her son Li Baozhen. The other is the unreachable back of the blue shirt. It is the same age in the mud bottle alley. Zhu Lu was horrified by the Taoist priest. Lu Chen smiled and asked, Miss Zhu, have you ever heard of a saying, the Zhu Chen family will never be against each other? Zhu Lu frowned and shook his head. Lu Chen smiled and said, this is an idiom from Kingming Xianxia. It is not widely spread. It is only in a place called Zhulu County in Yuzhou and everyone knows it. So you haven't heard of it, it's very strange. Zhu, he heard a mess. Did Chief Daoist Lu say something wrong? So weird. Shouldn't the ending be not strange? Lu Chen said slowly, in terms of background you started early. In fact, compared to the long eyebrows in Taoya Lane, Longquan Jianzong is already Xieling of Jade Pure Realm Jianxiu, and that grandfather is a small town opening a wedding shop. Hu Feng, who is Kai Dao Huang, the co-owner of the world's engagement shop, is better than many small town peers. So Zhu Lu, you have been complaining about your bad luck for so many years. Very wrong. Because to a certain extent, although you were born in Lizhu Cave, you are a foreigner with a very rich background because you don't even need a backer. Your backer is your previous life and yourself. You even entered the town earlier than Pindao and reincarnated into the Li family on Fulu Street so that one day the water will come to an end and then you can push the boat with the flow. This is a good saying, it is pushing the boat with the flow for your eldest son, Li Shixing, protect the Dao. During this process you will continue to grow and climb very fast. For example, Ma Kushuan and Lu Xianying, how fast they have broken through these years, you can only fast not slow. Lu Chen raised his fingers together. Pindao can swear that if there is a lie, he will be struck by lightning. In the distance, the old coachman who used to be in charge of the Lei Buzhankhan division really couldn't take this by Yujing third headmaster. In fact, in the Qingming world, there is an idiom that is not widely circulated, called Zhu Chen Ji Hao. In addition, there is a relatively uncommon saying that the Zhu Chen family will never contradict each other. Because of his background, Lu Chen did not lie today. Even in the eyes of the old coachman, Zhu Lu is an excellent background. It can even be said that among the younger generation in the small town, as long as Ruan Xiu, Li Lu and Li are ignored, Xixing is a small group of people who don't talk about it. She is a well-deserved leader. She is indeed better than Xia Ling in Taoya Lane and Hu Feng from Happy Events shop, because Zhu Lu belongs to half of the Outlanders in Lizidongshan. As for the opportunity, it was also given to her early. Even Qin Pingon, it may not be clear now, Zhu Lu is one of the young people who chatted the most in their spare time, such as the old coachman Aunt Feng and Lu Wei. They are all guessing where she came from. Although the clouds cover the fog, this in itself can explain the problem. If the background is not big, how can the landscape be hazy and make them feel like seeing flowers in the fog? Just because she was born in the Li family on Fulu Street, there was Li Shixing who was Li Zong on behalf of the Peach first, and then Lu Chen entered Lizhu Cave. No one dared to act rashly. In other words, no one could afford it. The cause and effect of this door. He looked complicated. Zhu Lu gritted her teeth creaking, her fists clenched tightly, and the blue veins on the back of her hands burst out. Yuzhou in the Qingming world, you can regard it as a continent on this side of the vast world, for example. The Taoist stomped his feet. Aquarius continent under our feet. In fact, this analogy is not quite accurate. Lu Chen pointed to the north. It should be said that it is the Beiju Luzhou with a larger territory, because Yuzhou belongs to the first-class state in the Qingming world. There are two places in the Yuzhou region that are most famous. One is Huayang Palace in Difei Mountain. Taoist priest Gao Gu, he is now the 8th in the world in the Qingming world. The other is the ancient battlefield in Zhulu County. And your previous life was the local Taoist priest over there. And the biggest thing your predecessor did was to make Zhulu County a battlefield site. The last Taoist priest to fight with you at that time was this one. Gao Gu, who was forced down the mountain, has always been a master of masters when it comes to being aggressive. He lightly grabbed Zhu Lu's arm, and his eyes signaled her not to be afraid. Zhu Lu was expressionless, staring straight at the Taoist priest, and words popped out from between his teeth. You to the bottom, yes, who? Lu Chen just said to himself, let's use an analogy again. There used to be a gambling table. Some people only had a few copper coins in their hands and some people had a few taels of silver in their pockets, and it was carrying a sack of gold and silver ingots. As a result, I made a wrong bet, and the bet was soon over and I lost. According to the development of a certain context, you will first know Li Huai have experienced some things and then follow Li Shixing to travel to Beiju Luzhou, and you will also get a dagger engraved with chasing the deer, and this just one of the many opportunities you deserve. Think back carefully. When you left Fulu Street when you were young, did you ever meet a poor boy who was arrogant and might be wearing open crotch pants at the time? Well, you saw him later but you still didn't like it no matter what. Stand up. Yes, you must have been with Li Baozhen earlier. I guess that in the Li family mansion you must have repeatedly weighed the battle between heaven and man and finally chose the second son who was more partial to the wife of the master instead of the eldest son. Maybe it's because Li Zixing's name did not bring the word treasure. Because this is your robbery. A lot of the knowledge in our life comes from the books we read in our previous life. Of course, there are books inside and outside the book. So the books we read in this life are not only for the present but also for the next life. In your previous life it was because you were so smart you kept accumulating and eventually at a certain moment, it blossomed causing you to lose the big one because of the small so you missed a natural opportunity to join the path, and in the end instead make a big mistake. It is still the headmaster by Yujing who can help you to intercede, and then help you find rectification and make corrections and you can save yourself from death. Therefore in this life you will start all over again and you can either make up for your faults or, as always, look, you are just too smart, so smart that you are not smart at all and now you start to resent the poor road. Why didn't you call on you earlier and why did you stand by? You have to know, how old are you when Pin Dao goes to Lizidongshan to set up a stall? Do you think that a person's fixed character is so easy to change? Otherwise why is there an old saying called Jiangshan? Easy to change and hard to change. Besides, it's your father who has nothing to do with you, Pin Dao. You still like to blame others and you never like to look for problems from yourself. Few are like this even if Pin Dao entered the town 10 years earlier. Maybe it really works but unfortunately Pin Dao is so weak with small arms and thin legs. Yes, do you think that you can enter Lizhu cave? You can help by saying that you can help? Besides, we people we have to encounter something and suffer hardships so we can change our minds by ourselves, make up our minds and make a vow. Asking for more blessings, always thinking of meeting noble people to help you on the road, this kind of mentality is unacceptable. In the Book of Sages and Sages Li Baozhen read, there must be such a sentence: if you can't do anything you will turn to yourself and you will return to the world. Ask outside. Lu Chen turned his eyes away, smiled and said, Zhu He, you are good at everything, you are honest and you are kind-hearted. It's not too late to make amends, maybe, probably. An old man to this day is still full of guilt for the young man of the year. He is sincerely happy for the achievements of the young man in Mud Bottle Alley, but he does not dare to show the slightest real emotion on his daughter's side. After all these years it's not easy. Lu Chen put his hands horizontally, tapped the railing lightly and looked up into the distance. What is a gaming table? You don't want it, someone wants it. Zhu Lu asked, who are you? Lu Chen smiled and said, Pindo's surname is Lu, think big and think high. Zhu Lu didn't realize it, tears streaming down his face. Lu Chen smiled and said, Miss Zhu, you don't need to cry so sadly, it's not too late to make amends. Otherwise, what is Pin Dao doing to you and telling you the truth just to make you regret it? Pin Dao is a big man who can be counted on the mountain. Very busy. The old coachman snorted. You are one of the few great cultivators in the world. There is nothing wrong with this sentence, but you, Lu Chen, are very busy? Life takes a step by step, such as reading, writing and writing. You must write stroke by stroke conscientiously and write calmly. Lu Chen raised one foot and gently twisted the ground with the toes. It's said to be 3-year-old to see old age, but in fact each has its own clumsiness of writing and speed of footsteps. People's blessings and achievements. Besides, they are really willing to work hard. A stupid person is willing to see more and learn to be smart, and a smart person is willing to behave in a stupid way. According to the saying of your hometown, if you have a kung fu, you will not be seen to die early. Seeing the merit slowly, it has a new atmosphere of its own which can surprise others and scare people. Lu Chen stood up straight, stretched his waist and said with a smile, someone has a saying that is a good one. The storm is bad and the barnyard grass is in good spirits. There is no other way, that's all. You, me, him and her. And we all work together. Okay, don't look at Pin Dao with those cannibalistic eyes. Pin Dao will give you another choice, an opportunity to say goodbye to your father and then follow Pin Dao together. Return to your hometown. Zhu Lu, Pin Dao has opened the skylight like this to say bright things with you and the ugly words are ahead. If you still can't cherish it, Pin Dao can only laugh and laugh. Lu Chen raised one of his sleeves, shook it and said lazily, do you know what this is? Pin Dao advises you it's best not to know it for the rest of your life. After walking along the way, the Queen Mother Nanpin found that she liked to chat with Yu, so she took the girl into the house together. When she took the initiative to pour the water, Yu asked a question that only she could ask. He raised his head and held a cup and asked in a low voice, "The Empress Dowager, do you have Chongchun Palace wine? I'm tired of the boat and car. I'm a little tired. Drink a little wine to refresh myself so that I can chat with the Empress Dowager. Let's use a glass of wine to grow our spirits, let's drink with a bowl." Nanzhan nodded with a smile, took out 2 pots of Immortal brew from his sleeve, and then performed a restraining technique to prevent the partition wall from having ears. He gently bumped the wine bowl with the girl and drank it all in one go. The woman took the initiative to say something about what she set up last time. The inside story of the reception of Qin Yingguan at the banquet was of course the process of being modified by the Empress Dowager. The truth and the false were confused. For example, she said that she was very sincere and offered Qin Pingon a very high price at that time. Li Song is willing to do his best to devote his human, material and financial resources to help him cultivate and climb all the way to the bottleneck of the Ascension realm. Nanzhuang said her eyes were red and there were faint tears in her eyes. She took a sip of wine, stretched out her palm, brushed the table lightly and murmured, You said it is like this, why can't we talk about it? In a face-to-face discussion with Qin Pingon before, she said that she was Jean Dan, but she was actually Yuan Ying. However, Qin Pingon could see through the realm at a glance. You really dared to say, "The Empress Dowager, don't be angry, to be honest you shouldn't talk like this, talk about money and business with businessmen and talk about sages and sages with scholars. Find another opportunity to talk about feelings with buyers and sellers, and do business with scholars." Nanzhan was stunned for a moment, then raised his head and smiled. "It seems reasonable." Yu asked cautiously, "The Empress Dowager, Lord Yingguan didn't do anything unethical to you, did he? That guy, when he is good at talking, he is good at talking, when he is not good at talking. Forget it, if you don't want to, if you don't dare to think, don't think about it." Nanzhan and Yu chatted for a long time, each finished drinking a jar of wine, but was kidnapped by the little girl and took away the 2 jars of Chongchun Palace Immortal brew, which were good things come together, and Yu took a big stride. "Leave the house." Nan Hairpin sat alone in the room, looked around and felt resentful in her heart. She twisted the white bowl with her fingers and held it up high, about to knock at the table. After just thinking about it, the Nan Hairpin was put down gently, and he couldn't be bothered to hold his breath with a white bowl. She leaned back subconsciously and almost fell to the ground, only to remember that the seat she was sitting was just a bench, not a chair she had been accustomed to for many years. The woman was so angry that she waved her sleeves vigorously and smashed the white bowl against the wall. She sighed again and brought the white bowl that was about to be smashed back to the table. The woman who stared blankly at the empty bowl, the more she thought about it, the more aggrieved her chest was heaving. At that time she was certain that the other party would not dare to commit murder in the capital. A close disciple of Wenxing, how can he act rebelliously? The key point is that if he has some sense and brain, how can he bear the thriving Dali Foundation, especially the achievements made by his senior brother Cui Yu, in the hands of your junior brother Qin Pingon? As a result, Nanzhang's head was beheaded by the other party. If she hadn't immediately used a secret method of Lu's family heritage. Thinking of this, Nanpin couldn't help rubbing his forehead, then stretched out his palm and gently brushed his neck. This guy who stepped on all the way suddenly became rich and his bones were lighter. Just like that, a young squire with a yellow hat and blue shoes entered the palace. The person who led the way at that time was Lu Wei, who claimed to be half a fellow countryman with Qin Pingon. This ancestor, Nanzhuang, whose real name was Lu Jiang and Lu Tai, all came from the Lu family's clan. The one surnamed Qin not only lit a lantern talisman for her, but also gave Lu Wei a cloud of incense sticks. He cut off Nanzhan's head, pressed her head down and forced her to kowtow like pounding garlic and finally flipped the table. The reason why Nanzhu took the initiative to ask to leave the capital with the emperor this time was not to travel around the mountains and waters, but for 2 personal matters, and they couldn't get around that Qin Pingon. One thing is to confirm with Qin Pingon whether there are still a few rhinoceros beads left in the bead string in his hand. The second thing is that she wants to know whether she can break away from the Lu clan of the Yinyang family in Middle-earth, and completely distance herself from the behemoth that makes her feel lingering fears. Just like the old coachman was at the fire temple before and was ridiculed by Aunt Feng, if he couldn't do it he would confess to Qin Pingon, sell it well and expose Lu Wei's old bottom there. It's not that the old coachman was not tempted, but he still gave up the idea. He really felt that even if he provokes Xianxia, he shouldn't have a grudge against the fortune teller. After provoking Xianxia, he only suffered a few swords, but if he could handle it, he would turn the page. But it is not a matter of a lifetime to have a grudge against the Yin-Yang family's Qi practitioners, especially the Lu clan of the Middle Earth. The old coachman was so afraid of the Yin and Yang family, not to mention the insider who became a chess piece on the chessboard, Nanju. It's just that for some reason, since Lu Wei returned to the family, she seemed to have completely forgotten about her Lu Jiang. Among today's southern hairpins, there is a green bamboo hairpin made of ordinary material. Yu found out, but she didn't go into it. She just thought it was the leisure and elegance of the Empress Dowager. After all, she looked very elegant. Previously in the palace, she didn't have it, and she didn't dare to deceive the young hidden official who was deeply involved in the city. She did secretly put the piece of natal porcelain back into Liju cave. While Nanzhan's face was changing and imagining, an unfamiliar voice suddenly sounded in his ears. How does it feel like a small weaving bureau official who could only eat dust behind the carriage just now can suddenly be on an equal footing with the queen mother of a country in the Dali dynasty? Nanzhan slowly raised his head, only to see a young Taoist priest wearing a lotus crown. As for the woman beside the Taoist priest, she seems to be surnamed Zhu? Is it the maid next to Li Baozhen, the weaving officer? He didn't even look at it. The woman was only sluggish for a moment and soon returned to normal, then burst into tears, quickly stood up, stepped back, stood still, and then knelt down and kowtowed, making a loud bang. It was only when she thought about distancing herself from Lu Jiang that she had no more thoughts at this moment. Li Hua took the rein and shouted with a crying voice, "Lu Jiang pays respects to her ancestors." Lu Chen jumped sideways and stretched out his palm. Don't admit your ancestors to Pin Dao. Pin Dao already owes a lot of debt. Except for the child of Lu Tai who has clear secrets, humorous speech and filial piety, there are really few masters who can make his ancestors truly worry-free. When I encounter something, I like to kowtow to my ancestors. When something happens to my ancestor, I will kowtow to you, okay? Just work. Since it doesn't work anyway, whoever is to blame. Lu Jiang turned a deaf ear and just kowtowed vigorously. Lu Chen moved a bench and sat down, raised Erlang's legs and said with a smile, "Okay, what's the point of kowtowing without the slightest sincerity? Do you really think that the ancestors above the statue are dead?" Lu Jiang still didn't listen and just kowtowed, probably to show her sincerity. Her forehead was already red and swollen. Lu Chen patted his knees and said, "I'm afraid of you. Get up and I won't let you kowtow in vain. As a reward I will say hello to Lu Xian. In the future the name Lu Jiang will be written off from the Lu family tree. No. I count to 3 and if I don't get up again I'll leave. We just pretend I didn't come here today. As for the idea of leaning on Lu Jiang to get close to me, Nan Hairpin, be careful that you're daydreaming and you end up with a bamboo basket to fetch water. An empty one. 1-2. Nanzhan quickly stood up. Lu Chen smiled and asked, "I didn't want to come here at first, but there is one thing. I'm really curious. Let me tell you, where did you order Yang Hua to put that piece of life porcelain?" Nanzhan didn't dare to hide it at all and still had a cry and said in a trembling voice, returning to the ancestor, "If Lu Zhangjiao is to teach, I have let Yang Hua secretly put that piece of life porcelain next to the ancestral house of Qin Pingan's Nipping Lane." Oh. Lu Chen's eyes lit up and he couldn't close his mouth with a smile. "Next door, left or right?" Nanzhan said, "It's in the drawer of Song Mu's study inside a primary school book." Lu Chen seemed a little disappointed, pouted, stood up, "Go home, go home." Nanzhan hesitated. Lu Chen stretched out his finger, tapped the corner of his eye and said with a smile, "Nan Hairpin, I'll send you an extra word. Don't scold Qin Pingan in your heart anymore. He can actually hear it, so don't bother to care about it." The southern hairpin was struck by lightning. He was really panicked now. In terms of memory and forbearance, especially revenge, that guy definitely impresses Nan Hairpin. Lu Chen laughed and said, "You really believe it?" Nanzhan was at a loss. Lu Chen nodded to himself and said, "I can believe it. If you don't believe it, you may suffer. If you believe it, you won't suffer at all, but you will gain something. Why don't you believe it?" Lu Chen kicked the bench back to its original position. "It's the hardest thing in the world to sail at night." Ignoring the wall with Zhu Lu, he walked straight out all the way. Lu Chen wrapped his arms around his sleeves. "Pin Dao doesn't agree with this. In my opinion, the hardest thing is to bend over to pick up the money all over the place. It's easy to pick it up, but almost no one is willing to pick it up, but they don't want to carry it in their pockets. In this world, everyone should be rich and there are dragons and snakes everywhere. How strange. Fellow Daoist, do you know the copper coins all over the ground? If they have a meaning, what are they? Zhu Lu's bright light suddenly appeared and his face became sad and he murmured, reasonable. That's right. Lu Chen laughed, you know that. God is beautiful, giving us the opportunity to make mistakes. It's too late, the center is in violation. Spak. Lu Chen stretched his back. The Daoist in the mountains reports the news of plum blossoms. In the land of Qingxing Kingdom, Jiangyi, a secluded Taoist temple with dense forests, the gates are deserted, and it seems that no one comes here to burn incense. After all, Xianxia is just a real person who protects the country and has never served as a national teacher. It is very suitable for him to live in seclusion and practice Taoism, away from the turmoil of officialdom. When carefully rested in the Taoist temple these days, Cheng Laozhen, who looks like a child, bathed and changed clothes today, and went to the patriarch's palace to light 3 incense sticks. Purple smoke rose up and then a woman emerged from a picture. It was the master of Lingfei Palace, the patriarch of Dongting. Walking out of the ancestors' hall together, Qingqian and Xiangjun ancestors talked about the current situation in detail. It turned out that a spoiler suddenly popped up not long ago, and the posture was to compete with Ling Figuan for the Hehuan mountain boundary. Except for the Emperor Lu of the Qingxing Kingdom, the other monarchs of the 2 countries around Hehuan Mountain have signs of changing their words. Qingqian said, the 3 of us are in the imperial palace in the capital, and we have to discuss with His Majesty the purchase of the mountain. Faithful, let us know. Xiangjun wondered, what background do they have? Didn't they leak any rumors before? As for the opening of Hehuan Mountain as a private dojo and Lingfei Temple going down the mountain, the other party stopped him halfway, but Xiangjun was not very annoyed but more curious. Qingqian explained, in the previous 2 times, this group of people acted more secretly, and the other party was directly looking for the emperor and discussing matters face to face. 1 man and 2 women foreigners have used a blindfold. It can be seen that the other party's bid is very high, otherwise the emperors of the 2 countries would not take the risk of enmity with us and earn such hot fairy money. When he came to a quiet and elegant courtyard, when Shen was waiting here and was reaching out to tease a koi in a water tank. Knowing that it is the sale of our Lingfei Palace, as long as you are not deaf, you should also hear that Chao Zushir has appeared in the Hehuan Mountains before, and they dare to be so flamboyant and blatantly compete with us for territory. I wonder why? Xiangjuan turned a deaf ear and Qingqian didn't care. When Xen was in a bad mood recently and he had his own reasons. Although Qingqian didn't know about the discussion outside Fanwan Mansion, when Xen was moved here by Jingxin's Xingzi to recuperate. The injury was not minor but not too serious. Lingdan and medicinal diet, it is inevitable to take care of them for a few months. There is only one thing that makes Qingqian more attentive. It seems that when Jing has tried to sit and forget several times during this period of time, well, the whole person started to get cranky. There is a chess set and some old chess records in the house. The 2 pots of chess pieces are both carefully polished from black and white pebbles in the stream. The material is ordinary but it is very careful. Xiangjun took off his boots outside the house, walked into the room with bamboo mats, sat on the side of the chessboard, stretched out his hand and invited, Qingqian, let's talk about a game. After Qingqian took his seat he smiled and said, it is better to obey orders than to be respectful. When carefully did not take off his shoes and sat at the door with his back to both sides of the game, absent-minded, brows furrowed, and his expression extremely gloomy. If it wasn't for the Taoist temple of another family, when Xin would have scolded him a long time ago. It is possible for him to drink too much. With the strength of alcohol, Yufeng would find a secluded place in the mountains and he had to smash countless hills. Just because he has been miserable in recent days, every time he closes his eyes, does his homework and concentrates a little, the face of that woman will appear in his mind, her slightly sarcastic expression, especially her hot and cold, extremely contradictory eyes made Wen Qin have to withdraw a mustard seed every time he started to sit and forget. As a result, the speed of his recovery from his injuries was much slower than he expected by a day or 2. A young Taoist priest wearing a golden flower crown walked lightly, walking like flowing water, and came floating, standing at the door without looking at the courtyard. He bowed his head and said respectfully, "Watch the master, there are guests." When I came to the door, 3 people, 1 woman and 2 men were all Qi practitioners, and the disciples couldn't see their cultivation, and they claimed to be negotiating a deal with the Guanju. Qing Qian hung her fingers in the air. Looking at the ancestor of Xiangjuan, she nodded. Qing Qian gently landed on the chessboard with a clear voice and said, "Bring them here." The boardman carefully came to the interest, listened to the sound to identify the position, listened to the footsteps and breathing. He didn't look like the kind of accomplished Taoist person. Could it be that there were some scumbags with stinky money in their pockets, stunned, and left the mountain the top is too far, but dare not take the Lingfei Palace which has just been promoted to the head of Zhong seriously? After a while, one carefully saw the figures of the 3 people. The first one was a young man in a Confucian shirt, with a hosta on his head and a smile on his face. On the left there was a woman who looked like a countrywoman, and the one on the right made Wen Jingxin couldn't help but take a few more glances. The buns and snails were green, with a graceful figure, wearing an emerald green robe of high rank. Her slender waist, which is full of grip, is still as heavy as the clothes of the Immortal family. Xiangjuan just glanced at it and he knew that these few were not easy people, no doubt that they had crossed Zhonglong. It is only said that the emerald green robe on the young female cultivator, even Xiangjuan has only seen it on the Taoist Lingji. According to the records in the book, this kind of Xinjiazhui, which is known as 100 years old and 1 blow, only appeared in the ancient years when the real people on the land had their own places. It is said that it can help Qi practitioners to contact over time, vicissitudes. Times have changed, and almost no female nuns are wearing them anymore. Since Qing Qian, a local snake, may not be able to hold them down, Xiangjun, the patriarch of the Shangzong, didn't think about how to test it, put the chess pieces back in the chess tank and said with a smile, "Lingfei Palace, Xiangjun, Taoist name Dongting. You are?" The leader of the young man looked warm and bowed. "By Diqing, Gu can meet the ancestor of Xiangjuan, Qingzhenjin, Master Wen." The maid on the side, the autumn waves were flowing and she silently gave a blessing. She was just such a silent movement with a lot of style. Only the middle-aged village woman remained motionless. Wen carefully thought he had heard it wrong. "You are Gu Kan? Why did the high apprentice in the middle of Jingju in Beidasheng go here to start a stagnant site where birds don't shit?" As for the Lizhu cave where Gu Kan was born in the Great Li dynasty, Wen Xinxing had certainly heard of it long ago. What Gu Kan did in that book in Jianhu when he was young because of the relationship of a certain landscape travel journal, it was even more so on Beipingzi mountain which was well known by passers-by. What is this, a prodigal son who can't change his money? Gu Tsanzwa stood up and nodded with a smile. "I am." When carefully tutored, "You actually recognize me?" Gu Kan nodded and said, "There are a lot of rumors in the rivers and lakes and it's hard not to hear about it." When carefully wondered, "You don't look crazy, why do you say you are a madman?" Gu Kan smiled and said, "It would be nice if Master Wen could still feel that way after we finish talking about it today." Wen laughed carefully and gave Gu Kan a thumbs up. "It's finally a bit of a madman." Xiangjun didn't stop Wen from chatting with Gu Kan carefully. Through words and deeds, it is not a bad thing to know as much as possible about the character of the other party. Since he is Gu Kan and his identity is unequivocal, then the previous question can be explained. In the vast world, Mr. Zheng's direct disciple of Beidasheng really doesn't need to sell face to Lingfei Palace. Gu Kan glanced at the chess game in the house and said, "I don't dare to delay the hands-on conversation between Xiangjuan Patriarch and Qingzhenren. The younger generation will have something to say." Xiangjun smiled and nodded. "Please speak." Standing in the small courtyard, Gu Kan calmly said, slowly, "Since Xiangjuan Patriarch and Lingfei Palace have only negotiated preliminary intentions with the Lu clan of Qingxing Kingdom, they have not yet signed a contract in black and white. If there is no certainty, the younger generation will still have a chance, and the business in the world is nothing more than asking for a favor, and the one with the highest price will get it. Besides, I'm bound to win that piece of Hehuan Mountain. There's no price gouging. Anyway, every time you make a bid, it'll only pay you 1 more grain rain money. So if you can't get angry, you can keep bidding and let me spend more money." Xiangjun frowned slightly. Qing Qian was even more displeased. "Do you really think that Gu Kan is your master, Mr. Zheng? Can you speak so loudly?" Wen carefully laughed angrily and took the lead in saying, "When will the face of our Lingfei Palace be worth only 1 piece of Gu Yes money?" Gu Kan said, "Master Wen just needs to take good care of his injuries. The implication is that you, Wen Xian, are not qualified to intervene in what the 2 parties are talking about. The maid next to her, whose pseudonym is Ling Yan and whose name is Chun Xiao, covered her mouth and smiled. Those who have read the book insinuating yin and yang and speaking in such a bad way, hearing the coquettish snicker, Wen carefully shifted his gaze to the efficacies of the maid's appearance. In an instant Wen Jing's eyes flashed and his mind was uncertain. A Dao heart fell into an ice cave. His qi machine was not running smoothly and his face flushed. Fortunately he returned to normal soon, but fine sweat oozes out of his forehead. Guken glanced at the face at the moment. He narrowed his eyes, retracted his gaze, looked playful and said in his heart, Ancestor Xiangjuan, when Xin is a qualified qi trainer, any sect will cultivate it well and the wind on the mountain will be well cultivated. It's big and the road is rough, but don't be careful if you say that you will die prematurely. Xiangjun said indifferently, Are you threatening me? Guken shook her head and said, Junior is just laying out facts, reasoning and possibilities. What's more, as long as you and I don't move to rescue soldiers and turn around and look for Master, do you think I need to talk nonsense to you? It's just a business, it's just more money than money. When I came here today I already gave Lingfei Palace and Chao Tianjun its good. Hahuan Mountain Zaya Shujian Lake? If it's really Shujian Lake, I'll set a life and death statement. I will screw all your heads off. Han Qiao has the highest realm and is one of the top cultivators in Beidasheng. She could hear the conversation between the two sides. She was amazed and couldn't help asking for the experience in her heart. Didn't you agree to have a good chat with that Xiangjuan? Why did you change your mind temporarily? Guken doesn't look like Guken anymore. Ling Yan smiled sweetly with his heart. Master seems to have seen someone he knew through those warm and careful eyes, and this person has a close relationship with that person, so he was angry, very angry. Of course this is related to the master fought such a fierce battle with us on the wild side, and then went to fight with Chao Ci for the second fight. The injury added to the injury and it was inevitable that the Tao's mind would be unstable. It was all related. Entering the fairyland is a mental journey of seeking truth, and the relationship is even greater. Han Qiao smiled and said, Little bastard know Guken so well? Lung Lian laughed and said, Don't say it so badly. In the future if I can't say it I will call you sister. Don't worry, you are a housewife and I can be a child. Han Qiaosa walked to Lingxian's side, twisted the neck of her white greasy slippery hand and shook it. Little girl, you can't shut the door when you talk? Your mouth is full of feces, are you with your ass eyes? In an instant, the whole courtyard was filled with a chilling aura that was as condensed as a substance. Ling Xian shrank his neck, begging for mercy again and saying he didn't dare. Qing Qian was a little shocked. Is this infighting? As expected of a monk who came out of Baidi City. Guken said, I'm busy with business. Han Qiaosa loosened her fingers, rubbed her neck effectively and said timidly, Master, don't blame me, it's your aunt who bullied others. When Xan was restless. Qing Qian's face paled when he heard the words. Gukan's sister-in-law, isn't it the sister-in-law of Mr. Zheng from Beidasheng, the immortal Han Qiaosa? On the mountain, whether a qi practitioner of a certain realm can be called outstanding, in fact the threshold is very simple, that is, can it be regarded as a sword cultivator? The patriarch of Lingfei Palace, the Taoist Tianjun Chao Rong, is of course in this list. And White Emperor City Han Qiao say the same can. There is an undocumented gossip on the mountain. It is rumored that Han Ko's once vowed to cultivate 12 Dao techniques, and every path she chooses is a mountain climbing path that the cultivator of the White Emperor City genealogy is discouraged by. Regardless of whether the rumors are true or false, there is a consensus in the outside world that Han Ko's will definitely be able to enter the Ascension realm. Xiangjun smiled and said, Hahuan Mountain, let it be for you, Gu Dao, you don't need to spend more money on the grain rain. Guken was surprised, hesitated for a moment, took out a piece of Guyu money from his sleeve, twisted his fingers, walked straight into the house, his feet did not touch the ground, squatted beside the chess game, and changed hands from the chess pot on Qing Qian's side. He picked up a chess piece and placed it on the chessboard, then put the Guyu money on the edge of the chessboard, raised his head and smiled. Just when Guken owes you Lingfei Palace a favor, I will remember whether you use this favor or not. In my heart the road is high and the world is impermanent, whether it is Chao Tianjun who has been in the sky for a long time or Xiangjuan who is most likely to go to Baiyujing to practice and certify Taoism, whether it is appropriate to be the next palace master and say it carefully, there are mountains and rivers. When we meet there is always a chance to meet again. Guken paused for a moment then asked with a smile, Do you need the younger generation to do it for you, to crush this grain of rain money so that you can't see or worry? Xiangjun still smiled, shook his head and said, no need. Just keep it. As you said, whether I go to Baidi City or you go to Baiyujing in the future, I believe there will always be a chance to see you again. Gu Can's eyes were as hot as two fire cages, staring blankly at the female crown of the Taoist Dongting. Xiangjun turned his gaze subconsciously as if avoiding his edge. Just before she could say anything, Gu Can had already stood up with a smile, walked out of the courtyard, turned around and bowed. Junior is rude and offended. After leaving the Taoist temple, Han Xiao asked, Xiao can, after thinking about it, just create a sect here? Gu Can shook her head and said, I haven't thought about it for now. Anyway, I just bought a piece of land and the cost is not big. Han Xiao smiled and asked, huh? Gu Can didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It doesn't mean that. What are you thinking about? In fact, Han Xiaosei doesn't care about the love between men and women at all. She just feels a little distressed for Gu Can. Back then, when Gu Can retreated from the primal infant realm and entered the Jade Pure realm, the person who guarded the pass was Han Xiaose. She failed once, but what made Han Ko's even more worried was that after she opened the door, she saw the young man who was described as haggard, with a lot of tears and snot on his face. As for Gu Can's inner demon, Han Ko's had already guessed it. At that time, the young man sitting cross-legged on the futon, clenched his fists with both hands, rested on his knees, lost his soul and muttered to himself. I don't like these. The truth, I just can't beat them. I have to bow my head and admit to them. I am me. Gu Can will always be Gu Can. I can correct my mistakes, but I will not admit my mistakes to you. I am not wrong. You know, I have never lied on your side since I was a child. I have never changed, but you have changed. How could Han Ko's know how to comfort people? She could only stand at the door and look at the heartbroken young man, like a beast hiding in a dark corner and licking his wounds alone. Then senior brother Jing Juzhong appeared at the door. Han Xiao's hair was hard and she wanted to let senior brother help, so that Gu Can could tide over the difficulties and overcome this calamity. Jing Juzhong just smiled and said, on the basis of this little heart, you dare to say that you want to cultivate the avenue and reach the top in Baidi City, just to prove that Qin Pingon is not wrong and you are not wrong? As a result, Gu Can's next performance made Han Ko's quite frightened. Forcibly suppressing the young man who didn't go into a rage, he kept sitting still and just scolded, fuck you. Han Xiaosei was blinded at the time, and there was no one who dared to talk to senior brother like this. Have you ever? Possibly, but the fate is predictable. Fortunately, the senior brother did not get angry, just shook his head and smiled and said, people are poor and short-sighted, and the river is narrow and the water is rough. It's really pitiful. Gu Can just lowered her head, panting, and the sequelae of her failed retreat appeared. Her face was covered in blood, which flowed continuously from the 7 orifices, washing away those tears and snot. Jing Juzhong stepped on the threshold with one foot. No intention, no necessity, no firmness, no me. Dao is the degree, so it is not arbitrary. Gu Can slowly raised his head, turned his neck and stared at the master, the first person in the world of magic. Jing Juzhong said with a smile, this is what Qin Pingon might have told you when he saw your field, because he would pity you. But you and he have never dared to admit it. As long as Gu Can doesn't die, Qin Pingon will die. If you can't get out of Shujian Lake in a day, why don't you pity him? Because you don't even have the ability to pity him. You obviously hate him so much that you don't even dare to hate him, not at all. Han Xiaose felt chills down her spine, and the dignified cultivator in the immortal realm actually had goosebumps on the spot. Gu Can seemed to have lost all of his anger at that moment. But at this moment, Jing Juzhong had already turned and left. He just asked the disciple a question and at the same time gave an answer that was not an answer. If you don't kill the demon Qin Pingon today, how will you protect Qin Pingon in the future? Does it depend on Gu Can's nascent soul realm? You want to go to a higher place and you have to climb to the highest place. One day when the debt is paid off, tell Qin Pingon that you are wrong and I am right. Jing Juzhong had already left and the room was silent for a long time. Gu Can said hoarsely, help to close the door, I want to retreat. Han Ko's remembered very clearly that that day Gu Can, who failed to retreat in less than a stick of incense that day, had already successfully exited the retreat. In the world of Qingming Mizhou, the boundless and vast plains, there is a solitary Ye peak. Some people were standing on the top of the peak and he has been staring at the blue sky since he was young. Because Runyue Peak is too high into the clouds, The weak water at the foot of the mountain is like a snake in the eyes. Wu Fu has worked hard and the latest 10 people in the world are at the bottom. Although they are at the bottom, they have opened a clear distance from those candidates. The mountain, which has always been clean, has rarely been so lively recently. It has always been so lively that there has been no emotional ups and downs, so I feel a little annoying. The first Qi trainer to climb the mountain was a guy named Lu Tai. He led a local dog who came from an unknown rural road. He named him Lu Chen and his nickname Lu Air. The woman who climbed the mountain with Lu Tai is called Yuan Ying. She is very young, but her identity is not simple. If it wasn't for a pure young girl who was born in Zhuhedangshan, then she would be the 10 young candidates in the world. The youngest one. On the top of a mountain, the ban is the true meaning of Wufu's hard work. Moreover, this fist intent is in line with the day and night changes of the sun and the moon. During the day, the fist is masculine and powerful, and when the moonlight is like water splashing on the ground, it turns into the feminine and delicate. Generally, only ascended monks and end warriors can climb the mountain. Of course, there are exceptions. You have worked hard to live up to your expectations. In recent years, a few people have not been very high and they have sneaked up the mountain. Of course, it has something to do with their hard work and unwillingness to hurt innocents. For human beings, Wu Fu Kuei has an inexplicable closeness. Except for people, especially monks. Having worked hard to live alone in a grass hut, this sloppy young warrior with a thin body, a full beard and a scruffy face, did not know where he came from or where he was going. When I was young, I seemed to have opened my mind and remembered things. All the previous memories were blank. I walked in the Mijo plain just because I could see the high mountain as soon as I looked up. By the side there is no sense of fatigue at all. It was a long time ago that the child realized his strangeness. It turns out that not everyone can breathe and practice qi, but just walking on foot, they have the will to get up on their own, and they continue to grow as if there is no end. Usually the only hobby is to make ink. This process does not delay the hard boxing practice. Before, under the eyes of hard work, young men and women who were like gods and Taoists took a dog to the mountain. Hard work didn't care about it at first, no matter what Xianxia means, since it's a skill to be able to go up the mountain. As long as you don't stay at Lipu Peak for too long, hard work will generally not care. Just glanced at the handsome man in fluttering white clothes, as if the spirit of the Yin was traveling far away. As for the young female cultivator who doesn't seem as good-looking as men, it can be seen that she has good qualifications. According to Lu Chen's statement, there is always a small group of talented people. Everyone else is climbing mountains. The ancient pines in the mountains are green and form a forest. Walking on the road, the clothes of the visitors are all green. Yuan Ying was amazed. Wow, the scenery is beautiful, it's really beautiful. Lu Tai held Lu Chen in one hand and a green bamboo stick in the other, jokingly said, "You are the only direct descendant taught by Lu Kiko's group. When you see the scenery you just wow wow wow." Yuan Ying said with a smile, "Isn't it because you are here? It's not up to me to pull the text." She is only in her 20s now. Born in the blessing land of Sipai, also known as Poetry Yufudi, Yuan Ying has 2 masters, Lu Qi and Chao Group. Both of them are Haoran monks who have come to Qingming Tian to travel to experience, and the masters have all returned to their hometowns. Although Yuan Ying was in the Jade Realm, she was not a Taoist official. When she was on the list, she had not yet reached her 20s, and she climbed to the sky from the Lujin realm and directly entered the Jade Pure realm. With Lu Tai, a few years ago they opened a restaurant in a partnership near a fish market in the market. Yuan Ying has always regarded herself as the proprietress. Anyone who calls her the proprietress will get a 20% discount. If anyone asks her when to have a wedding party, 40% off. They wandered all the way to the top of Runyue Peak. At that time they were working hard to create pine smoke ink in a thatched hut. Lu Tai held a green bamboo stick in his arms and leaned against the door, just laughing and not speaking. Yuan Ying jumped out of character and went straight to the pile of rocks near the cliff. One of the strange rocks floated on top of it. The 4 characters Yen Shou Dao Chong were engraved on the red lacquer cliff. Here, Yuan Ying pointed her toes, her figure floated towards the stepping stone, and she jumped on it a few times. She laughed to herself. Lu Tai smiled and said, "Let me introduce myself. The Lu family from Haoran world. The surname Lu Mingtai has a very low level, but he is very funny and he has the ability to relieve boredom. There are many in the world." The local dog lay obediently at Lu Tai's feet. The young people in the house just sat behind the desk and concentrated on making ink. Lu Tai took out an ink ingot from his sleeve and threw it gently on the table. The ancient pine in Qianyang County Zhongnan Mountain is of better quality than yours. It was agreed in advance that it was not a gift. After reading it, remember it. Give it back to me. The young man glanced at Mo Ding, nodded and said, "It's really good, it lives up to its reputation." Lu Tai smiled and said, "You can take it as soon as you see it. If you are of high realm, I will treat it as a rent paid to you, the landlord." The young man shook his head, just focused on pounding the smoke repeatedly. Lu Tai asked, "On the mountain, is there anything to eat besides the self-brewed Songhua wine? Judging from the posture, it can only be pine nuts, potatoes and tuckahoe. Will the taste be too bland?" Hard work is silent. Lu Tai glanced at an old bamboo flute on the table and asked casually, "I still can't beat that, Master Lin?" The hard work turned a deaf ear, and there was only the sound of a pestle in the dimly lit room. Lu Tai lifted the local dog. "Lu Chen, don't be stunned and say hello to brother hard worker." The dog murmured. The food on the mountain was a little bit lackluster. He raised his head hard, puzzled. "You, a son of the Lu clan, what are you doing compared to your own ancestors?" After that, Lu Tai stayed behind without hesitation. Hard work is not without hesitation, good words are useless. And the order to evict guests still doesn't work, it's almost like carrying a chicken. The dog, they were thrown to the foot of the mountain together. As a result, Lu Tai and the others climbed the mountain again and again. They tried so hard to teach him a lesson. The guy fell on his back and pretended to be dead on the ground until the middle of the winter. I asked him what he wanted to do and Lu Tai said to wait. Hard to ask how long it takes to wait. Lu Tai said that at most 1 month hard work will stop talking. As a result, a month has passed, but still did not wait for the so-called people of Lu Tai. Hard to think that this guy is making excuses. Fortunately, he is eating and drinking here. As a result, Lu Tai raised his arm and put his fingers together. "I swear to God, if there is a fake from the ancestors to my generation, everyone will suffer." Thunder strikes, the sky strikes 5 thunders. The female cultivator named Yuan Ying was still booing next to her, talking loudly. "If you work hard, I will let you stay for another half a month. If you can't wait, then go down the mountain. You will not even think about climbing in the future, believe it or not." The little chicken of Lu Tai, pecking at the rice, agreed very readily, then sat on the threshold and said earnestly, "Brother Kue, you can't continue like this, leap yefeng one by one because of your status, you are intimidating and high in realm. As for the brothel, let's just go and for nothing." Glancing hard at this bastard, "How about you?" Lu Tai said decisively, "I want leave." Raising his feet, Lu heavily stomped his feet. "Fall to the ground and take root, don't move the nest." The hard worker in the house said indifferently, "Then you'd better prostitute for nothing." Lu Tai clapped his hands. "I just said that Brother Kue and I are generally wonderful people. It's a pity that we don't have a good relationship with me." He said hard, "It's only a day away. If you can't wait for someone, don't blame me for being rude." Lu Tai nodded and went to burn incense. I don't know if it was a mistake or something, but there were people climbing the mountain the next day and there were more than one. It was hard to get out of the thatched hut and stood side by side with Lu Tai on the cliff, looking towards the foot of the mountain. Yuan Ying squatted not far away playing with the dog. There were 3 people who went up the mountain, and Lu Tai smiled and helped to introduce. Zhang Fenghai of Baiyujing Yushu City is only half a step away from the 14th realm. When the heavy rain comes, it is estimated that he will cross the remaining half a step. Amazing. Right. Walking behind Zhang Fenghai's is LV Bixia, one of the alternates in the world. It's fine to say that it is Nye Bixia. It's almost the pinnacle of the perfect ascension. The patriarch walks the circle and the Taoist name is Xian. Wow, what a beauty. Yuan Ying immediately stood up and ran to Lu Tai's side. "Where is it?" Lu Tai stretched out his finger and pointed to a woman beside Zhang Fenghai on the mountain road. She was slender, but was dressed in a wooden hairpin and sackcloth sandals. And because she worked all year round in the Xianxia cave of Xinyue Palace, she looked dark-skinned. If you want to say beauty, she is really close, but speaking from the mouth of the extremely handsome Lu Tai seems to be a bit unworthy of the name. Shixinjiwen is the lowest level among the 3, so there is no way to know the dialogue on the mountain top. But Lu Bixia raised her head and looked up, but the guy who was indistinguishable between males and females ran away. She has disappeared in the Qingming world for a long time, and has been living there for a long time, or hiding in the soul of Master Xingyun. As for Shixinjiwen, it is the Yanxia cave that he entered by changing his own way. After leaving that prison, Zhou Xian was of course secretly glad that she never wanted to revisit the old place in her life. In that haze cave, the fairyland of Xianxia has been worn down to the jade realm bit by bit. The only regret is that the growing wheat field is 30% better than previous years, and we will never see you again. Lu Tai squatted on the ground, rubbed the dog's head, raised his head and smiled. Brother Hard, why don't we make a bet? Shaking his head hard. Lu Tai is a talker, even if he ignores him he can keep on talking. Lu Tai changed his method and made a bet with Zhang Fenghai, betting that he would definitely be able to achieve what he wanted, and after that he had to promise him a trivial matter for Lu Tai. Zhang Fenghai agreed without hesitation. The cultivator who voluntarily gave up his identity as a Daoist official in Baiyujing didn't even ask who the other party was or what it was. Lu Tai sighed with emotion. As expected of our sect master Zhang, he is majestic. If you follow him you will definitely be able to eat a lot. Afterwards, Zhang Fenghai went to the top of the mountain, first knocked down a piece of rock at the place where Daozu rested, rolled into the weak water and then went to the house to find hard things to talk about. Not to mention Zhou Xian, even Lu Bixia who had seen the wind and waves and Yuan Ying who always had a big heart were shocked. Only Lu Tai's frightened appearance was fake and he extended his thumb to Zhang Fenghai's back. Sect Master Zhang, you are unparalleled. Sitting hard behind the table, there was a row of 100,000 ink ingots formed on the table in front of him. Zhang Fenghai crossed his arms around his chest, leaned against the door and said, I plan to use Runyue Peak as the location of the sect, what do you think? Hardly frowned, well talk about this when you're in the 14th realm. Zhang Fenghai said, you don't need to be the suzerain, you are not suitable to be and it is not good to be, so you only need to put your name on the sect genealogy and I will be the suzerain. Stand up hard. Zhang Fenghai smiled and said, don't be angry first, after Daoist's dispersal, there will be a change in the world of Qingming. You can't avoid it. Instead of waiting it's better to be the first. He asked hard, did you make an appointment with Lu Tai in advance? Zhang Fenghai shook his head and said, see you later. Lu Tai raised his voice and said, heaven and earth can learn from it. Kuei said with a sneer. If I remember correctly, the Daoist ancestor said that I have the 3 treasures to hold and treasure them, because I am kind and frugal, and I don't dare to be the first in the world. Zhang Fenghai was silent for a moment. You are a little out of mind. Lu Tai jumped and said angrily, Zhang Zongzhu, you are arrogant, don't say that to my hard-working brother. Zhang Fenghai smiled and said, but your temper is so good, you can endure him for so long. Lu Tai was lying on the windowsill and explained, what we mean by sect master Zhang is not complicated, it means that he has left Baiyujing and he doesn't even want Yushu City's Taoism. Now it's a Taoist priest. Then there is the golden rule that Daozu said, put it in the Qingming world, it applies to everyone has to listen and you have to endure it. It's only you, it happens to be you, that's why I came here. Sect Master Zhang is the same reason, but am more selfish. I just want to have a lavish hospitality place and reunite with friends in the future and have face. Sect Master Zhang is very fair, he wants to replace Daozu and make certain things that he thinks not right get on the right track step by step. Lu Bixia took a deep breath. Teacher Xingyuan is even more unstable. If it wasn't for the guy who broke the secret, they actually didn't know what Zhang Fenghai wanted to do. Only the pines on the top of the mountain are like tides. It was the guy who broke the silence. Sect Master Zhang, after all, this is where Daozu rested. Let's move the stone back to its original position. If you feel ashamed, I can call Sister Lu to go to Ruoshui to find the stone. Hearing these rude words, Lu Bixia, Zhou Xian, and Yuan Ying breathed a sigh of relief almost at the same time. He said hard, I'll talk about this when you are in the 14 realms. Zhang Fenghai nodded and said, yes. It's actually the same word with 2 meanings. Previously it was said to wait for Zhang Fenghai's 14th realm to fight again. The meaning of hard work now is that if you can reach the 14th realm, you are qualified to start a sect on this Lipu Peak. Lu Tai rubbed his hands and said, okay, it's good to talk, we have to celebrate, let's kill the dog to eat meat, stew dog meat in winter, that taste. For the first time Yuan Ying had a different opinion with Lu Tai and she stared. Lu Tai. Lu Tai smiled brightly and said, just to see you all so bored, make a joke, relieve boredom and see that you are nervous. After that, the 2 groups of people stayed here. With Lu and Taiwan, the 2 sides quickly got to know each other. Probably apart from Baiyujing, this place in the world is the most recent month. In the dark of this night, Lu Tai pulled hard. Everyone randomly chose a stone to sit on it and each had a drink. Under the leadership of Lu Tai, they began to look forward to the future. Inexplicably, a bunch of 6 people gathered together in order and worked hard. Wu Tai Yuaning, Zhang Fenghai, Lu Bixia teacher Xinyun. A mountain without the name of a sect for the time being, a pure martial artist and 5 qi practitioners. According to Lu Tai's vision, the suzerain must be Zhang Fenghai, the patriarch LV Bixiao, and the one in charge of money is Shi Xingyuan. The chief worship should be hard work. But the second person in the martial arts of the Qingming world directly refused. So Lu Chen volunteered himself and did his part. Yuan Ying took advantage of the situation and became the second seat of worship. There are 10 people in our sect, which is enough. Any more is to raise waste. Senior sister, why are you staring at me and you didn't say anything about you? Shi Xingyun said helplessly, I didn't even look at you, what nonsense. She really didn't think Lu Tai said anything ugly. That's why I misunderstood senior sister. Lu Tai snorted, our sect will have the most in the future with a total of 11 people. Then every 100 years one will be eliminated and one will be added. If you are one of the 10 people in the world and 10 candidates, you can stay still. Becoming the top 10 pure warriors in the world is also the same treatment. One day our sect will be a master of the masters. Don't be stunned and give some applause. Zhang Fenghai just raised the jug high. Lu Bixia smiled, so, I'm really looking forward to it. Shi Xingyuan raised his head and looked at the 2 bright moons in the sky. He was in high spirits and it seemed that he had to practice well. Only Yuan Ying applauded vigorously. As a result, Lu Tai said something unpleasant. Senior sister, such a bright moonlit night makes your skin darker. Shi Xingyun laughed angrily. You always have trouble with me, you only know how to pick up soft persimmons, and you have the ability to talk about Lu Bixia. Lu Tai said embarrassedly, this statement is a little too charming and it's easy for people to misunderstand. Shi Xingyun sneered and said, you can only talk about things. Lu Bixia nodded and said, seriously, I guess I'll have to say, let me rest for a while without a second effort. Lu Tai clasped his fists with both hands. I'm afraid of you, admit defeat and admit defeat. Zhang Fenghai laughed. His face was strained and there was a smile in his eyes. Lu Tai raised his head and took a sip of wine and wiped his mouth. The substitute of the world of sages and sages in ancient times. The manifestation of the stars and stars of today's heroes. Tonight is fortunate to drink with you, not enough, far enough. Meet this month and this day after 1,000 years. Drink again, I'll get drunk first. Slam. It turned out that Lu Tai fell asleep on his back. Yuan Ying said embarrassedly, my husband, the wine is very good and the amount of alcohol is average. On the top of the capital of Dali, next to an old man who was enjoying the scenery, Sun Chu, who had come here in confusion, stopped and said, Sun Chu Xiaoguan, I have seen Hong Longzhong. The clear-faced old man nodded and said with a smile, I called you here temporarily today because someone has just entered Beijing, and it is more appropriate for you to show up to receive them. The old man didn't wear official uniforms. In fact, apart from attending court meetings, this 5-rank official of the Ministry of Rights was not required to be so restrained. This is a special case of Daoist officialdom. There are only 3 of them in the capital. They are the most in line with the reputation of being clear and expensive. Except for the Department of Examinations of the Ministry of Personnel and the Department of Wuxia of the Ministry of War, they are the ancestral halls of the old man. In name, the 2 servants of the Ministry of Rights can jointly decide the merits and demerits of the various mountain and water gods of the Dali dynasty, but the real person who cares about the specific matters is actually the priest of the ancestral temple, so this prominent position of the old man, it is called Little Heavenly Official. Sun Chu asked in his heart, Master, is this person related to Mr. Qin? The old man nodded and pointed to a young monk from a foreign country walking on the street. His name is Zeng Yi, but he doesn't belong to Luopao Mountain Monk. But when Qin Pingon was in Shujian Lake, he always took Zeng Yi by his side. It was Xianxia, the neighbor next door to the island, relying on luck and his own efforts. Now Zengji is already the head of the Wudao school, and he is the top spot of an Immortal mansion, so his route to Beijing this time, the espionage on the side of the Ministry of Punishment, early. It was sent to our ancestral priest Qingli. Because he has such a relationship with Qin Pingon, I think it is better to let you come forward. The Ministry of Rights and the Ministry of Punishment didn't say much, and the objection is not big once or twice, it's just like forming a default rule by each yamen, which is very good. Sun Chu smiled and said, "If there is not much objection, there is still objection." The old man twitched the corners of his mouth. "Every government office is following the rules. It's nothing, no one has any selfishness." Wu Yuan, now the prefect of Chuzhou, is not only the son-in-law of the Yuan clan of Xianxia Kingdom, but also one of the few students of the national teacher Cui Yu. The new kiln superintendent who took over the position of Chao Gingxin Jianfeng is the 4th grade. Si Jingquan, the original official of the Ministry of Households, went to Beijing to serve as the prefect of Baoshi County some time ago. And so on. Between the imperial court and the yamen, there is always going to be a quarrel, and the Shanshui officialdom is no exception. Sun Chu asked, "Master, am I going to see Master Xing?" The old man said, "Furry. You don't know how long to wait. People have only entered the capital with the front foot, and you will block the road with the back foot. Isn't this telling Xing Yi that the court is watching his whereabouts?" Sun Chu smiled and said, "I said that on purpose. It's been a long time since I heard Master's teaching." The old man couldn't help laughing. Not long ago, Sun Chu was only in Nangxinfang, a 9th grade junior officer who was temporarily in charge of the repairs of the capital temple in Honglu Temple. In the capital of Dali, they are not called officials. Now Sun Chu has been transferred to the arsenal department of the Ministry of War and has been promoted, but this promotion is not without warning. As early as when Honglu Temple was the prelude class, Sun Chu was able to take charge of the Beijing Temple Affairs Department and the Promotion Department. In addition to the official duties of the office, and when the lord of the Luopao Mountain Qinshanzhu was in Beijing, Sun Chu followed him, so he just went up one step and became the 9th grade without any waves. That's why Sun Chu's preacher, when the old man was drinking with his disciples on the Changpu River, would make a joke. Master Qinshan is still not upright and he doesn't know how to say hello to the officials. Otherwise, I will be sorry for the official prestige of Lord Yingguan. Jokes aside, in the opinion of this old man who has been in charge of the ancestral hall of the Ministry of Rites for many years, Sun Chu, a young man, is destined to continue to circulate among the various ministries and government offices of the imperial court, starting with Honglu Temple. In the future, each position will not sit for long as 3 or 5 years, as short as 1 or 2 years. Of course, the rank will get higher and higher. This involves an inside story that Sun Chu is still not clear about. In fact, it is a promotion picture, arranged by the national teacher Cui Yu long ago. Sun Chu's intuition was correct. Cui Guosher, who likes to see many little things in person, not only knew him but also kept staring at him. Sun Chu once said unintentionally, saying that he was a poor ghost who can't keep money. He is a reincarnated. Therefore, the Dali court will always send the poor. Therefore, Sun Chu, who was born in the 2nd class Jinshi, stayed in the famous Qingshui Yamen of Honglu Temple for so long. The old man once asked Cui Guosher personally, was it really useful? Cui Yu replied with a smile, it must be useful, although it is not very useful, but after a long time, it is still quite impressive. Sun Chu bowed his hands and said goodbye, but the old man nodded in greeting. On the street, Xing tucked his parcel across the street, took a walk alone, and admired the bustling scene of Daoist capital. Zheng Yi was talking badly, so he asked Ma Di not to go to Beijing with him. Ma Di began to look for all kinds of reasons that were not reasons. What Zheng sect master is after all a ghost cultivator so unpopular on the mountain, you are going to the first good place of the Dali dynasty without her help. You are a clumsy idiot, you can't explain things clearly, trivial things can easily become big things. Zheng Yi can't laugh or cry. The Wudao school is the official school recognized by the Dali court and recorded by the Ministry of Rites. In addition, Zenji also has a peace and no problem card. Although it is the last class, it has a high gold content. It is really a kind of peace and no problem in this Aquarius, and everything will be fine. Ma Di also knew that she was making trouble unreasonably. Seeing Zheng Yi's unusual insistence, she had to back down and let Zheng Yi go to the Lulafang in the capital to help her buy some books and antiques that she could get doubled if she succeeded and sold them again. Zheng Yi slowed down a little but soon returned to his normal pace. In front of the road there was a young man with a jade tree facing the wind. It was estimated that he was a Beijing official. If he was an official or not, Zheng Yi had a clear look, but this young official was more bookish. Sun Chu cupped his hands and said softly, "Sect Master Zheng, my name is Sun Chu, I work in the Arsenal Department of the Ministry of War. I just got the news and left the government office to come to see you." Zheng Yi was at a loss and bowed his hands to return the salute. Pedestrians hurried on the road. Sun Chu and Zheng Yi turned sideways to give way at almost the same time. In order to prevent the other party from misunderstanding and thinking more, Sun Chu explained the reason to Zheng Yi directly, and used the words of his heart to reveal his identity as a Qi practitioner. I was working at Honglu Temple before because I was with Mr. Chen's student Chao Qingqing. It was the same year as the imperial examination and he was also a friend. So the last time Mr. Chen came to Beijing, Honglu Temple asked me to be in charge of the reception. In fact, I didn't do much from the beginning to the end, but thanks to Mr. Chen's light I won several awards at Lilifeng. This is a rare and expensive ancient book. The imperial court has long known the relationship between the Wudao school and Mr. Chen, so when you appeared in the capital this time, Honglu Temple decided to let me be responsible for the reception after considering it. It belongs to the officialdom. Cross-department secondment work is a coolie, no wages. After all, Sun Chu didn't tell the truth when it involved some unknown officialdom insider. Zheng Yi thanked him again and said, Lord Lao Sun is here. Afterwards the two of them walked together, Zheng Yi the head of the faction and Master Sun. Sun Chu couldn't help laughing. Master Zheng, you don't need to be so polite, just call me by my name, but it really doesn't work, Brother Sun too. Ro. Zheng Yi smiled and said, Master Sun has always called me the head of Zheng. Sun Chu nodded and said, then let's change our tune and call him by his first name. Zheng Yi grinned, it's good to be brave. Sun Chu asked, when you arrive in the capital, where do you want to go? Zheng Yi nodded and said, before I came I made a list. I would like to take a good look at the 20 small places. Sun Chu said, do you have relatives, friends and a place to stay? If there is none for the time being, I can help arrange accommodation. The official residence of Honglu Temple will definitely not be simple, but if you say how good it is, there is definitely no place. The advantage is that there is no need to spend money. I can lead the way in the famous big inn in the capital, and there are them nearby, but with my little salary I would never dare to boast about Haikao and say anything about food and shelter. Zheng Yi smiled and said, no, Mr. Chen helped to recommend a place. It's a Xianxia inn in the capital. I know the exact address and plan to live there. Mr. Chen said in the letter that the shopkeeper of that inn was called Gai Yen, and he could live there without spending any money. In addition, Mr. Chen also asked Zenji to go to a street. At the entrance of an alley outside Yun building, from the registration number, you can see a nascent soul immortal named Lu Jia, and a man from the Zhao family in Tianshui. As a teenager, you can also let the latter take Zheng Yi to the capital together. Mr. Chen has always been meticulous in his work. How to get from the inn to the alley is clearly written in the letter. Zheng Yi hesitated for a moment. No matter how much he didn't know about officialdom, he also knew that people came here with good intentions, and it would be against the rules to let them go home. Never thought about. Sun Chu nodded and said, since Mr. Chen has already made arrangements, I will not have much to do. Anyway, if I have something to do, I will go to the arsenal office to find me. Sun Chu took out a pocket sword box with the word Tian engraved in seals from his sleeve and handed it to Zheng Yi, while Sun Chu himself kept a box with the word Earth, which was convenient for the two sides to send letters with flying swords. Comes in handy again. Sun Chu stopped and said with a smile, I won't follow. I seized the opportunity to take a break from my busy schedule, so I will go to Lilifeng to read books. It's annoying to read books and not buy them, so I have to change bookstores often. Zheng Yi said tentatively, can I make an appointment with you to go to Lilifeng together? And a friend asked me to help me buy books. I don't know how to do it and am only going to be deceived. Sun Chu nodded and said, it's all official business. Zheng Yi grinned. This Master Sun, who was serving in the Ministry of War, was somewhat similar to Mr. Chen. Of course, it was just a resemblance. There was only one Mr. Chen in the world. Sun Chu said in a heartfelt voice, how is the toll calculated? Zheng Yi was stunned for a while. After all, he had been with Mr. Chen for a long time, and immediately said, at least 3 books that Master Sun likes but can't bring back. Sun Chu smiled and said goodbye. Zheng Yi bowed his hands and said goodbye. Looking at Sun Chu's back, he felt a bit more like Mr. Chen. Later Zenji found the Xinjiang. If Mr. Chen wrote in detail in the letter, he might not have been able to find it. He knocked on the door and there were 2 young female cultivators in charge of hospitality. Guoyingbi and 2 others. They are very enthusiastic and they are naturally handsome, Yingying Yanyan like a pile of fat powder with warm words, 1 son 1 fairy teacher, but Zheng Yi is a little uncomfortable. After hesitating for a while, he didn't say that he was a friend of Mr. Chen, and he didn't ask the innkeeper if Gai Yen was there. Zheng Yi honestly paid a deposit even if he stayed. After Zhenji entered the room, Gai Yen is in her own house with her legs crossed, looking at the ledger, doing abacus. Not bad, business is booming. Lord Yingguan did business, and sure enough he had a few brushes, but he just helped to provide a few ideas, and the business of the inn improved immediately. Zheng Yi put the package away, thought about it, and put it back together again, left the inn and went to the alley. In the alley outside the building, the master and the apprentice Lu Jia and Zhao Duanming had nothing to do, just in the snail shell dojo, one drinking and the other eating peanuts and salt water. The old man was a little regretful since Qin Pingon left the capital. His alley has not been so lively. It was Wenxing who first came here in person, and neither the teacher nor the apprentice recognized it. Later, Li Xing also came. Thanks to Zhao Duanming's eyesight, he was probably struck by lightning too much, and with his cleverness the old Yuan Ying didn't have any rudeness. After that, more characters came one after another. Some old people didn't dare to dream, and some were faces they didn't know. For example, on the side of the alley, there was a Li Shixing who claimed to be from Huaihuang County, Longzhou, and was from the same town as Qin Pingon. So what? Bar. Before that, there was a burly old Taoist priest with a small attendant, a young Taoist boy. These two Taoist priests, who looked like masters and apprentices, sneaked into the alley. Could Lu Jia not stop them? Must be stopped. Of course, there is Mr. Zheng from Beidasheng. Fortunately, the old cultivator has seen a series of big winds and waves, and the realm is not high, but he has a successful cultivation heart and a soul of nascent soul honed to a rock. After Jing Juzhong left, one old and one young, the master and the apprentice looked at each other with big eyes and small eyes. At that time it was the old man who said, "Duanming, you seem to be a little nervous. When you address Mr. Zheng, your teeth seem to be chattering." The teenager didn't refute anything, just pointed at the old man's forehead. "Master, quickly wipe off the sweat, it's raining." Today the old man picked up a salted peanut and threw it into his mouth and said, "Duanming, you do the math. What big man hasn't come to our place to order Mao?" The young man squatted on the ground and said angrily, "Master, please still click Mao. You have been a little swollen recently. Restrain yourself." The old man took a sip of wine and snorted, "Someone is coming. Duanming, keep your eyes open. Is it some amazing person on the top of the mountain?" Zhao Duanming turned his head and saw that it was a young monk with a lot of dust. He shook his head and said, "I don't know. Anyway, there is no one for the statues hanging in the Confucian Temple and the Martial Temple." The old man snorted, and when the young man lowered his head and reached out to grab the salted peanuts, there was not one left. Zheng Yi stood at the entrance of the alley, cupped his hands and said, "Zheng Yi of the Wudao school, used to be with Mr. Chen for a while, and Mr. Chen asked me to come here to find Master Lu and Zhou Xian." When Lu Jia heard this, he was in a good mood. Qin Pingon was a good guy. He knew that in the capital he could handle it, so he asked his friends to come here to say hello. When the ban on the dojo was opened, Lu Jia stood up, returned the salute and said with a smile, "Little brother, come in and talk." Zheng Yi stepped into this white jade dojo, and according to Mr. Chen's explanation in the letter, he told the old Immortal master about his plans for this trip to the capital. Zhao Duanming was very happy and suggested that all Zenji Lai came and Ichi Lane and Cheer Street, which were not on the list, could go shopping together. Although it was not interesting, it would be even more boring if you didn't go there. Lu Jia stroked his beard and asked with a smile, "Zenji, where do you plan to live?" Zheng Yi said it was the Xianxia. Lu Kao wondered, "So rich you went there to spend money?" Now the capital is talking about that place, the pigs that kill monks from other villages. You have to take it easy. Zhao Duanming nodded vigorously. "Brother Zheng, it's true, I heard that there used to be a bleak situation over there, but now I don't know why, but it's amazing, killing pigs to death." Zheng Yi didn't know how to answer for a while. Lu Jia said, "It's weird. The last time Qin Pingon came to the capital he didn't live there. How did he trick you into spending money over there? Is there a bonus?" Zhao Duanming said in a low voice, "It's not so, Brother Qin is a scholar of the bright wind and the moon." Zheng Yi quickly changed the subject and asked, "Master Lu, dare to ask where Mr. Qin lived last time?" Lu Jia lifted his chin. "It's just a few steps from here, the Market Inn. It's a bit shabby, but it doesn't cost a few dollars. I think Qin Pingon is very used to living there." Zhao Duanming smiled and said, "I heard from the shopkeeper Lu that Brother Qin also bought a piece of porcelain from him." Zheng Yi became more curious, thought about it and said, I'll go over there to see. Lu Jia nodded and said, when you get here just do whatever you want. Duan Ming looks stupid, but in fact he is not bad. Just remember to walk with him on the road, be careful especially when it rains and thunders, try to stay away from this child as much as possible. Farther. Zhao Duanming said angrily, Master, are you the one who kills your disciples like this? When did you get struck by lightning and accidentally injure others? Ah. Lu Jia nodded, that's right. Zheng Yi was confused but he still clasped his fists and left. When Zhenji left the dojo, Zhao Duanming patted his head and remembered one thing. I almost forgot, I promised to find a book for that girl's film Worry. Don't talk about the capital, booksellers around the outside have long since not engraved such a book. This travel note, where can I go to find it? Chao Gingxin, this bastard, said it was good and said that he would definitely help me find it. So far there is no news and it is unreliable. Zheng Yi quickly found the inn, and the old shopkeeper was cleaning the counter with a feather duster. The shopkeeper surnamed Lu saw the young man at the door and asked with a smile, Guest officer, do you want to stay in the store? Zheng Yi has carefully looked at the front hall of the inn. Except for the china on the counter, there seems to be nothing out of the ordinary. Passing by. The old shopkeeper nodded and said, It's okay. Since the door is open to do business, those who come are customers and those who leave are also customers. On the other side of the alley, a guy with an oily wine gourd hanging from his waist leaned against the wall of the alley, raised his hand, shook an old book and said with a smile, Zhao Duanming, come here to kowtow to Brother Chao. Zhao Duanming grabbed the book and said, Thank you so much. It took so long to finish such a trivial matter. How can you be a servant? Your uncle. It turned out that the young man was right when he discovered that the book only had the cover, and that it was a book of sages. Chao Gingxin hiccuped and stretched out his hand to hold the boy's head. Okay, I happened to meet you on the road, that book has been given to Miss Lu. Zhao Duanming was suspicious. Really? Chao Gingxin patted the boy's head. While playing in the mud, I have a serious talk with your master. Zhao Duanming stumbled and thought about it. He felt that Chao Gingxin would not play tricks on him if he was not a man. Then the young man saw the who said he was going to talk about business, and started to hang on his shoulders with his master, drinking wine. Zheng Yi apologized slightly and walked out of the inn. Now that all the money has been spent, Zheng Yi is still going to stay at the Xianxia inn. On the street there was a young girl walking in high spirits. She was reading a book while walking. Haha, finally got it. I've been thinking about books for so long. Although I have actually read the content of this landscape travel note for a long time, can it be the same if there are books or not? I used to go to the bookstore with my friends to read a few pages today and a few pages tomorrow. The girl who was away from home all day was worried that she would enter the shop, and she would have to be disciplined by her father, or maybe she would need a feather duster to serve her, so she simply squatted by the wall and flipped the book. The girl stretched out a hand to block the sunlight so that the reading would not be too dazzling. She was fascinated, and after reading many pages in one breath, she finally realized that something was wrong. It seemed that the sun was gone. She rubbed her eyes and looked up, only to find a strange man standing nearby. It seemed that his shadow just blocked part of the light, but it didn't delay her reading through the sunlight. In fact, most of her thoughts were still immersed in the landscape story of the novel, so she was still a little confused when she raised her head. In the past, her first thought would be to meet Deng Tuzi, but after meeting the customer of her own shop last time, she felt that it was not good to misunderstand others like this. When a girl is reading a book, she likes to mutter and talk to herself, and she will say that the Qin Pingon in the book is too romantic. How can you like a girl when you see it? But girls like to read books by jumping through the pages. Anyway, the content and plot have long been familiar to her heart, so she will choose those passages that are deeply remembered, which may be some beautiful sentences, such as the wisdom of this life in the book. Fu, I went to study in this life. I saw it again today since it is already her own book. The girl gently folded the page, or it may be some content that will make you sad when you look at it, such as in the story near the end of the book. The boy who practiced ghost Taoism in the book has never told the girl he loves that he actually likes her. The girl blinked. The strange man for some reason kept turning his head, looking across the street for a long time. From Shujian Lake all the way to this day, the former teenager who came here is now straining his face and trying hard not to look at her. It may be her face full of tears for fear of scaring her. Maybe it's because I don't know how to open my mouth, so I almost passed by. The girl closed the book with a snap and sighed, but unfortunately there is no sequel to this book. Then she didn't even know that boy. Did she find the beloved girl Sue? She stood up and tiptoed to go home, but after a moment of hesitation, the girl still said in a low voice and thanked the strange person. The man raised his arm about to wipe the sweat, coughed a few times, turned his head to look at her, and the first sentence he said was, "Dare to ask this girl, is there an inn nearby?" The girl was stunned. "What should I do? Don't be a fool. Just a few steps away, can't you see the signboard of your own inn?" The girl sighed, raised her arm, pointed to the plaque of her inn with the book in her hand. "It's here." Xingyi smiled brightly and said, "Okay, thank you." The girl always felt that this matter was mysterious. After thinking about it seriously, there is. In no hurry to go home, she pretended to walk along the wall in the opposite direction of the inn. Xingyi walked towards the inn and turned his head, just as the girl turned her head. Xingyi stopped and said hoarsely, "My name is Xingyi." The girl blinked. "Is it the same name as the Xingyi in the book?" The girl hesitated for a while, then turned towards him, waved the book in her hand and said with a smile, "It's a coincidence, the inn is my home." Xingyi nodded vigorously, "It's a coincidence." Inside and outside of the book they were reunited after a long absence. Sort of coming. Chapter 1041. Qin Pingon walked out of his ancestral home, Muping Alley in Huaihuang County, and walked with Xiaoma to the highest mountain in the west, Piyun Mountain in Beiyue. At the foot of the mountain, there is an endless stream of pilgrims and there is a lot of traffic. There is also a mountain market that specializes in selling mountain goods and herbs. Naturally, everything is real. Where can the mountain goods be faked? The price is not fair. The local pilgrims in Chuzhou, I don't even stop here. I just climb mountains to worship incense, seek wealth, marriage and peace. There are places in the mountains. Good men and women from other places spend a lot of money here. No wonder they set up street stalls here. The mountain hunters are more articulate than the others. They are not the Poria cocos dug from the back mountain of Piyun Mountain, or the thunder and wood chopped from the Auto Peak Mountain. Just put them at home to exorcise ghosts and ward off evil spirits. Otherwise they come from immortals. Ganoderma lucidum in Chaoshan Xianxia, you have always heard of it, you know? Going back to one of the hilltops of the unfortunate mountain management, the guest officer wants to ask why others dare not go, but I can dig the Ganoderma over there? Good question. Coincidentally, the mountain master and I, Qin Pingon, are also distant relatives who used to visit New Year's Eve. Our relationship is not normal. If we meet on the road over the county seat, he has to call him uncle, every year on the third day of the new year. During the 10 Dreams night dinner, that kid did a lot of toasts to me on the table. Don't you believe me? I can confront Qin Pingon face to face as long as you pay the toll when you get to Luopa Mountain. See if he dares not to show up, he has to call me uncle whether he recognizes this relative. Qin Pingon squatted beside the stall with his arms wrapped around his arms. He listened with relish and nodded frequently. When the man saw someone cheering, he smiled at Qin Pingon. One Xiao Mo with a yellow hat and blue shoes, using the mantra of millet grains, just makes his brain hurt when he hears it. Wei Bo, who used his blindfolding technique, appeared beside the two of them and asked with a smile, "You two are so leisurely?" Qin Pingon stood up and said in his heart, "I just found a shard of natal porcelain in Song Jisen's house next door. According to the size of this shard, it is estimated that it is only the last piece and there is no clue yet." Wei Bo cupped his hands and smiled and said, "It's gratifying to congratulate." Qin Pingon said with a headache, "It's not even one piece away." Wei Bo asked, "Since there's only one last piece of broken porcelain left, you don't have any feeling in your heart?" Qin Pingon shook his head and said, "The blame is here. There used to be a little bit, but now I have no clue. When I temporarily borrowed a Daoist technique with Lu Qin before, it seemed that they were very close. After returning to the 14th realm cultivation base, the subtle traction in the shadows disappeared. Could it be that the last piece of broken porcelain is in the Qingming world? The problem is that Lu Qin did not do this, and Qin Pingon also believed that Headmaster Lu couldn't do such an unconscionable act, so who would bring it to the Qingming world? Qin Pingon smiled and said, "Don't talk about this. Wei Shanjun has thought about the name? Talk about this at the wine table." Wei Bo didn't take them up the mountain, but went to a wine shop in the small town at the foot of the mountain. It was run by Huang Ernyang. She hired someone to look after the shop and belonged to the semicolon. Her son Bai Shang was a recognized child prodigy. A genuine seed of reading. I once studied for a few years in the school opened by Chen's in Longweixi, and now I have a reputation and I went to another place to study, and my future prospects will not be small. I can't say that I will go back in a few years. Went to the capital to take the exam and turned around and turned into an official man. The wealthy Huang Earnyang had already made it through, but she didn't think about finding a man all these years. In the local dialect, the man who was recruited by the widow was called Pin. Earlier, the drunkards thought that Jing Dafeng, who was watching the gate from the east, had this opportunity. Who would not know that when Jing Dafeng drank on credit every time? Don't listen to Huang Earnyang's snarky mouth at that time. Just look in the woman's eyes, there is brilliance, but there is no sign of drinking after procrastinating for so many years. Today Huang Earnyang was watching the business in this restaurant in person. Wei Bo picked a wine table and asked the woman from MILF's for 3 kilograms of the best wine, and laughed softly, since she knows that Jing Dafeng is returning to his hometown. Now I come here often and indirectly help Shanjun Mansion's rights and system department to save a lot of wine on the mountain. I have to take care of the business here, Mr. Mo, later. If you have trouble, you have to settle the bill. I am afraid that Lord Qin Shanju will use the excuse to go to the toilet, and the time spent in the urine will be gone. Xiao Imo nodded and agreed and then helped to explain, this is Brother Weiss' misunderstanding. My son drinks boldly at the wine table and the checkout is even more unambiguous. Wei Bo smiled and said, oh? How come I only heard that the second shopkeeper is at the Great Wall of Sword Qi, and he is the best at persuading drinks at the table? They don't take credit at all? Qin Pingon smiled, suffocated himself for half a bowl of wine, pursed his lips and said softly as usual, it's not that I never give credit, I secretly made an exception twice. There are only 2 exceptions. After that, if the wine shop wants to make an exception to whomever it will give credit, there is no chance. The wine table and wine bowls and drinks in the small wine shop are always there. Qin Pingon took the initiative to change the subject and asked, isn't the God Number night tour? Wei Bo said, it's not a night tour, I'm going to make up my own name, Lingza. As for the booklet, I added more than 30,000 words, the signature is enough. You are at the wine table today, you have to promise me this, I'll return the booklet to you, otherwise my friends won't have to do it in the future. Qin Pingon, don't think I'm joking, I'm taking this very seriously. Qin Pingon nodded, Wei Shan is a big monarch, I dare not refuse. Wei Bo stared and said, it's not true, is it? Qin Pingon hurriedly raised the wine bowl and said, Piyun Mountain has not been sealed by the Confucian Temple and given the title of sovereign god to Wei Shan. His temperament is good and it will be good in the future. Are we poor relatives still hanging out? Xiao Imo nodded, followed by raising the wine bowl without any nonsense, doing it first and drinking it all in one go. Xiao Imo said, don't forget about wealth and honor, Wei Shanjun shouldn't. Wei Bo picked up the wine bowl, bumped with Qin Pingon, turned his head to look at Xiao Imo and said helplessly, Xiao Imo, don't learn from this kind of person. If you drink well, the wine is too bad. I don't advise you on the wine on the table, I don't treat you as a friend, I don't have a relationship, and drinking is drinking water. You don't respect my wine, you just don't treat me as a brother. Listen, are people saying this? Qin Ping's placement was like a deaf ear, just silently reciting the word Lingza. According to the interpretation of words, Lingza means the anointing of the sky, which can be used as a metaphor for the virtuous politics of a country. Before Wei Bo served as the land master of Chiduan Mountain, he was the Daiyue Mountain king of Xinshui Kingdom, a great dynasty of the ancient Shu land. The divine name Lingza is somewhat nostalgic in nostalgia for the hometown. It's not that there are any taboos in the landscape and officialdom, it's just that for Wei Bo there are advantages and disadvantages. To be honest, it's not as good as Night Tour. As a prince of Baiyue Mountain in a continent, the divine name is related to Gonlin Yulu. Moreover, once Wei Bo chooses this divine title, he will be completely tied to Dali Song clan. After all, half of the mountains and rivers in a continent are the land of Dali. It means that if the Dali dynasty has a long period of peace and prosperity, and the politics is clear and bright, Wei Bo will benefit. But if the Dali Song clan encounters a situation where the emperor is confused and the government outline is not upright in the future, the pure golden body of Shanjun Wei Bo, naturally it will be affected to some extent. So Qin Pingon asked again, have you really thought about it? Wei Bo said, as a mountain lord with a divine name and water, wouldn't it be the best of both worlds? Qin Pingon smiled and said, if Wei Shanjun explained it like this, it would make some sense. Now that Wei Bo had made up his mind, Qin Pingon stopped pointing fingers, bumped the wine bowl and drank the wine in each bowl. Qin Pingon said, His Majesty the Emperor will be very surprised, pleasantly surprised. He will feel that the trust and support he has given to Pai Yunshan for so many years has not been in vain. Wei Bo smiled and said, to put it bluntly, Your Majesty will be glad that you didn't raise an unfamiliar white-eyed wolf? Qin Pingon complained, this is too ugly to say. If you don't belittle yourself like this, hurry up, punish yourself for a bowl and fill it up quickly. Wei Bo looked at Xiaomo. How is your son's ability to persuade him to drink? Did I misunderstand him? Without saying a word, Xiaomo drank a bowl first. Young master's words, persuading wine is persuading wine, and it is also reasonable. Wei Bo tutored, Master Qin Shan, find a servant like this for me too? Qin Pingon took a sip of his wine and snorted, one of a kind, no semicolon. Xiaomo was happy to hear it, so he wanted to learn from Jing Dafeng and mentioned one to his son. As a result, Qin Pingon immediately signaled him not to fight. Xiaomo silently transferred the wine bowl and turned towards Wei Bo. I will mention one first, but Wei Shanjun will not mention it. I mentioned how much I would like to drink and whether I would drink a full one. It all depends on the depth of our friendship. Wei Bo didn't get angry. My dear, you two are smashing the field together. Have you forgotten whose territory is here? Qin Pingon shook his palm, motioning Wei Bo to stop dawdling. Just have a drink, you're the one who talks a lot. Wei Bo smiled angrily. Little Emo, I don't see you outside. I'll leave the words here today. If you persuade me to drink, I will drink it. Anyway, every time we drink, our friendship will be shallower. Xiaomo was a little for a while. Qin Pingon smiled and said, what are you afraid of? The friendship between the two of you is as deep as the sea. If you want the wine glass to bottom out, you have to drink several wine shops one after another. Wei Shanjun is using the aggressive method with you. Wei Bo was speechless for a moment, so he raised his hands and clasped his fists to beg for mercy. Qin Pingon asked with his heart, now Yanghua, the Marquis of Changchun of Chidu, is she born similar to you and belongs to the reincarnation of a from the old Xinshui kingdom? Wei Bo smiled but said nothing. Qin Pingon didn't ask any more questions. Wei Bo tutored, that Uncle Qin from your family is fine, but he wasn't enjoying himself drinking, so he took a few friends here to hang out at the foot of the mountain. Just had an early drink here and he almost let me show up with a loud voice. Help with hospitality. The boy in Xingyi swaggered and brought 3 friends, a dragon slayer from the 14th realm, a flying Xiaozhou realm, and a sword immortal in the Jade Purity realm. Obviously following him, Wei Bo. Qin Pingon smiled and said, who told you to let him have a few closed-door meals back then and you felt aggrieved in your heart, but I have to clarify with you, believe it or not, Jing Qing is on my side and he never said a word to you. No, I didn't even say a word of complaining. Instead, what I said were good things. He didn't know the scene. While you were full of grievances, you had to hold your nose and say good things about you. It was hard for him. Wei Bo was surprised and thought that Qin Lingjun, the little bastard, would be on his master's side, and would only complain and say bad things about himself. Xiaomo nodded and said, Jingqing is on Luopao Mountain and he only said that he is on my side. He also never said that Wei Shanjun is not. He only said that he is your friend for many years, just like a brother who has been separated for many years and reunited, and the relationship is good. Already. Wei Bo rubbed his chin, feeling a little guilty. Wei Bo suddenly said, Your Majesty, who left the capital in advance, changed the established route. Instead of returning to the capital, he chose to continue south. Now he has entered the boundary of Yunzhou, and depending on his posture he will go to Suian County, Yenzhou Prefecture. Looking for you. Qin Pingon hesitated for a moment and said, You should not know about this kind of thing in the future. The teenager who used to drink secretly and alone later on the second shopkeeper's wine shop table and roadside, probably like the rivers and lakes of the children in Xingyi, drinking separately and enjoying various tastes, except that there is no making friends embarrassed drink. Wei Bo smiled and said, The old coachman who stayed in Yuzhang County is just like the motionless firefly in the courtyard. I don't think it's hard to see. Qin Pingon said, This is also a reason? Do you have the ability to find a worse one? Wei Bo raised his wine bowl and said in high spirits, I want to drink, do I still need an excuse? Qin Pingon hurriedly raised his butt, held the bowl with both hands and said flatteringly, That's a good word, it's the best thing to do at the wine table. Xiaomo, don't be stunned, we must accompany Wei Shanjun. Go 1. Yenzhou Prefecture in Yunzhou Suian County. The green hills are continuous, the green water is flowing, the fields and ridges are stretched, and the mountain flowers are about to burn. The sun was just right, and in the drying field outside the gate of the village's pulping workshop, there were lumps of pulp all over the place as white as bright silver. Donkeys were pulling the mill, pulling the idle sky. The little girls bulging and plump buttocks, the men swallowed their saliva and their voices became a little louder. The old man sat in the shade of the eaves, smoking a dry cigarette, mentally calculating the amount of rain since the beginning of spring, thinking about a year. The harvest, the door is pasted with the characters of blessing and spring festival couplets written by the grandchildren. The pen is immature, but it is full of vigor. On the road, someone carried 2 oblate bamboo cages on their shoulders, with fluffy chicken cubs clustered in them, chirping. The 2 carriages slowly passed by the boundary marker on the border of the 2 counties, and a Wenchang pagoda could be seen in the distance. On the bank of a tributary of the Ximei River, there is a pavilion with black tiles and white walls on the side of the road, and someone is already waiting here. Next to the pavilion, there is a 100-year-old torreya tree, like a huge umbrella cover, which just covers the small pavilion for people to rest. The 2 great Li officials in the pavilion, Pei Tong and Chu Liang, both hold important positions. They are the governor of Yunzhou and the general, who belong to the top military and political leaders of a local prefecture. On their trip this time, they left the heavily guarded government office with only one entourage. According to the law of the Great Li, the imperial court will provide these senior officials in charge of the frontier with a different number of cultivators who follow the army and serve the latter. A casual official who is temporarily granted a secretary officer outside the official position can receive 2 stipends. This is not a gimmick. After the war in Aquarius, the number of assassinations against important officials in the southern states of Dali over the years has been over 100. The assassins include the remnants of the wild demon clan who failed to escape from Aquarius. There are also some monks from various countries who are full of hatred for the Dali Song family. Regarding the latter, the Dali court had already come to a conclusion in the hands of the national teacher Cui Yu, and they could not implicate their family or anger the vassal court. The 2 cultivators were sitting at the entrance of the Xingting pavilion. They were very young in appearance. They were from Tongtian River in Jinwu Mountain and Dezhonggu in Fingxue Temple. This time, Pei Tong and Chu Liang, 2 important civil and military officials who started from poverty, received a secret order not long ago, asking them to find a place to pick them up at the border of Suian County today. The 2 carriages were parked on the side of the road, and Emperor Song he lifted the curtains and waved his hands, indicating that Inspector Pei and General Chu did not need to be more polite. Since he was not in the front and harem of the capital, the Emperor Song he was very casual. After reaching out he rubbed his buttocks and joked, "This ride on a horse carriage is so frustrating." Pei Tong immediately understood that the official road in Yenzhou Mansion under his jurisdiction had to be repaired. Song he didn't mind Pei's thinking too much and walked straight into the pavilion. The 2 secretaries and the emperor bowed to each other. Song he smiled and called out their names and chatted casually. Lifting his robe, Song he sat casually on the long stone bench in the pavilion. The wall next to the river had a big hole and the breeze was gentle but it was a bit cool. There were some charcoal graffiti of rural children on the wall. Song he raised his head and glanced a few times, reached out and pressed a few times, smiled and let everyone sit down and chat. Queen Song Mian was sitting beside the emperor, and Yu Yu, a monk with the Chinese character Su character for earthly branches, was sitting beside her. Zhao Yao, the Minister of Punishment, and Li Baozhen, the weaving officer of Yuzhou, were sitting together. The old Longzhou of Dali and the current Xinchuzi do not have a single state general, so Chu Liang, who is the general of Yunzhou, is also in charge of the military affairs of Hongzhou, like the general of Yuzhou Chao Wu. Garrison and several past military towns. Song he smiled and said, "On the way here I just turned over a few Suian County chronicles, and found that there have been many private academies opened in the past 100 years. There are more than 60 large and small. Within a county there are academies all over the place and the sound of books is loud. It may not be considered a noble family, not even a local prefecture. It is just a scholarly family of local farmers and family heirlooms. Therefore the literary fortune of Yenzhou Prefecture is not too strong, but it is better than orderly circulation. Perhaps in the eyes of the Qishir, those big prefectures, all kinds of landscapes and qi condensed in each door like colorful jewels, dazzling, but they are very different from each other. Then this Suian County is like a white jade plate containing Wenyun pearls of different sizes. Pei Tong immediately said, "Reporting to your majesty, Suian County has been a land of scholarly interest since ancient times. Although the property is poor, the local people attach great importance to farming, reading and heirlooms. Among the dozens of counties in the entire Yunzhou boundary, it can be regarded as the best literary and cultural education. It is one of the counties, but in fact half of the academies have been newly built in the past 20 years. Just like the largest Shixia Academy which was just established, there are also Yunlin Academy in Zitong and Jiaoqi Academy in Hengtong. They are not small. Some local sages pooled money to start them, and some officials who had been officials in Beijing for many years and then returned to their hometowns paid their own money, and then used personal connections to invite literary celebrities and scholars from scholars to give lectures here. Over time, the number of academies became the highest. Jian Prefecture and the academy in Suian County has a characteristic: as long as it is opened, it can last for many years, and the academy has always been taught by the master and the students read. Unlike other places, often for various reasons, it is abandoned halfway. Although Chu Liang, who is an official in the same state and considers himself to be a big old and rude, actually has few opportunities to deal with Pei Tong, who was born in the imperial examination, but today I just listened to what Pei Inspector said and General Yunzhou began to admire Pei Tong. His speaking skills are worthy of being a scholar who was born as a jinsher. Since most of the academies in Suian County have been established in recent years, isn't it because His Majesty the Emperor pays attention to the merits of cultural education? As for His Majesty's martial arts, the entire Hauran is known to the whole world. Even if half of the Aquarius continent is given up, Dali is still one of the top 10 dynasties of Hauran. Song He nodded and said, "Remember that there is a record in a county annals that there was a teacher from a foreign country teaching here, and he left an academy motto, teach people first and teach people to be real people?" Pei Tong immediately answered, "If the lower official remembers correctly, it comes from the first mountain chief of Wufeng Academy, and this sentence is engraved on a stone tablet." Song He smiled. It seems that Inspector Pei was able to get an uncommon excellent twice in the 2 successive Jingcha's official evaluations, which is not without reason. Cui Yu was both the national teacher of Dali and the mentor of Emperor Song He. When Song He was still a prince, he taught Song He an official heart formula, saying that the general seed brother of Daoist capital was an official. They are greedy for fame and not for money because they feel that the entire country was created by their parents, and they are born with a kind of ambition to defend the country. There is nothing but ambition, and it is difficult to know what is lacking, so the court needs to guard against arrogance and impatience. And officials from humble backgrounds who started in the end of the market and the countryside, have been poor and fearful since childhood, and even more saddened by the question of money. On the way to an official, they are easy to be greedy for money. Even if they are not greedy, they can't stop it. The relatives and clansmen around them suddenly made a fortune and became oblivious. It is difficult for people to be contented. They acted as a blessing in the local area and ran rampant. At this moment, His Majesty the Emperor looked at Pei Tong, who had already become the prefect of one state, and said with a smile, "Before I left the capital, I specifically asked Mr. Zhao from the household department to ask for 2 characters, which are the family instructions of their Tianshui Zhao family. Just put it on the carriage and bring it back to you." Pei Tong and Chu Liang quickly got up and thanked them. Song He said, "General Chu was born in a meritorious warrior. Now he manages the military affairs of the 2 states. Apart from military books, he does not delay reading a few sage books in his spare time." Chu Liang just sat down and got up again, clasping his fists to lead the order. In the end, he was born in the battlefield, and when he spoke he seemed full of vigor. Song He continued, "I see this Yunzhou boundary along the way worthy of the family motto, the weather should be clear and should be high. As for Pei Inspector Pei's own far-reaching scholarship and honesty, there is no problem. Yes, I hope Inspector Pei will not slack off and persevere in the future." Pei Tong's face was as usual, and he immediately got up and thanked His Majesty for his approval. It's just that this frontier official who is less than 50 years old has caused huge waves in his heart. His Majesty said the word, self? What about his Pei Tong's family? Moreover, Zhao Xianxia of the household department was the founder of the pavilion style. As for the family motto of the Tianshui Zhao clan, Pei Tong naturally knew it by heart. Ruyi village. Pei Tong immediately thought about it. and when he returned to the provincial governor's office this time, he immediately sent a letter to the family to let the family conduct self-inspection. And if there is a lawsuit, the person who should be brought to the court will be sent to the local government. There is no small punishment or a big commandment. In the ancestral hall, the genealogy will be expelled on the spot. Song He smiled and said, I called you here this time to accompany me to meet someone. The military general Chu Liang was at a loss, but the civil servant Pei Tong understood it at one point. After a little thought, he guessed the identity of the other party. There is no other person who can make His Majesty the Emperor make such a move. Could it be that Luo Peixian had a dispute with the imperial court because of the ownership of the Zimehi Dragon Palace site? So much so that His Majesty the Emperor is required to come out in person to smooth things out? Afterwards, the Emperor Song He said that he would take a walk for a while, and asked them to wait a few miles ahead in a carriage. Walking out of the pavilion with only the servant Zhao Yao and the weaving officer Li Baozhen by his side, Song He took out a slap-sized booklet from his sleeve, with the secret contents written by the Yuzhou Weaving Bureau on it. General Chao Wu of Yuzhou went to Piyun Mountain in Beiyue, and then Shanjun Weibo went to Luopao Mountain to inform Chen Pingan. Finally, the two sides met for tea at the ritual department in Shanjun's mansion. This is only the content of the main volume of the secret book. The content of the supplementary book is more detailed. It is a supplement to the main point of the main book. To this day, only the Hangzhou Logging Institute has not submitted any documents to the emperor. Previously, on the side of Lin Jingqing, the chief officer of the Logging Institute, the emperor was just chatting with the last man in the Lizhu cave, talking about the customs of the small town, but the two sides did not talk about any official affairs. Chen Pingan, under the pseudonym Chen Ji, opened a school in the village where the source of the Ximei River is located, and became a teacher. Knowing this secret, but none of them reported secretly to the Ministry of Rights and the Ministry of Punishment, and chose to deliberately conceal it. And the reason why the Dali court was due to the whereabouts of the monk in the Jade Pure Realm in Qinggong Mountain Luxiazu. The punishment department followed the vines and hit me in the right direction. After that, it was the first person on Luxiazu Mountain. Jing Hao, an old cultivator of the Ascension Realm, rushed to Yunzhou in person. Of course, Jing Hao greeted the imitation by yujing over the capital Luojing. The reason for the old cultivator was to come. Aquarius met a friend on the mountain in Chuzhou. In general, the court is still aware of it later. His Majesty the Emperor, who learned about this secret report halfway, just went to the logging farm in Yuzhang County, Hangzhou, and met Lin Jingqing. From the beginning to the end, this trip to Nanshang's friendship did not make much fanfare, so that the entire Hangzhou officialdom, it is still unclear that the Queen Mother is now in the Nan clan in Yuzhang County, and the Emperor has come and gone. Song He smiled and said, the law is nothing more than human feelings. Zhao Shilang, in this matter, you don't need to scold Gao Niu and Yu Huiting from the Ministry of Punishment. Put yourself in the shoes, and I won't take the initiative to leak secrets to the court. Well, I don't dare. Regarding the first river Gao Brewing of Ximei River Piyun Mountain Shanjun Mansion, which is in charge of the entire Beiyue landscape and spirits, and Dali Libu Temple, there are long comments and the content is the same. It can be seen from this that Gao Brewery is an old official who knows how to change the rudder. As for Yu Huiting, after she descended the mountain, she has served as a Dali military cultivator for nearly 20 years, and has made a lot of military exploits. This time she and a prudent Dali native Yuan Ying will be responsible for the lifting of the ban on the Longgong ruins. Regarding the excavation, the Dali court clearly intended to give her a bright resume, no matter whether she intends to serve as an official in the Dali court in the future, or return to Fengxue Temple to concentrate on cultivation, both in the Ministry of Officials and the Zushi Hall on the mountain. There is a saying, and the fact that the ban on the Dragon Palace can be opened ahead of time this time, so that the masters at the Qin Tianjian in the capital can save the heaven and earth treasures needed to open the mountain, and it is also thanks to the two that she voluntarily handed over. Dragon Eye is an unexpected joy. Afterwards, the Dali Punishment Department will have its own compensation, and will select treasures of the same rank from the B-character secret vault as usual and hand them over to Yu Huiting. Now the Punishment Department is discussing the matter, which will be awarded to Yu Huiting in the future. A piece of Taiping, no problem. Is it a third-class card, or is it directly given to the second class? Song He said, I've seen Yu Huiting's experience on the battlefield. The Ministry of Justice gave her a second-class no-care card. She deserves it. It's my great blessing that a woman is such a hero. Zhao Yao said with a smile. Your Majesty, when the Ministry of Justice wanted to issue a last-class know-nothing card, she confiscated it, saying that her military merits were distributed by herself early, and she would not receive any reward for no merit. Song He also knew about this and couldn't help laughing. As expected of a military cultivator from Fengshui Temple, it is more difficult for you to give gifts than to receive gifts. Zhao Yao suggested. Actually, it is not difficult for her to accept the gift, but it may be necessary for His Majesty to speak with Lord Xianxia, and to allow Yu Huiting to pass the gift card. She will definitely be willing to accept it. Song He said, this kind of thing is rare, right? I remember that Dili only broke the case in Zenji of the Wudao faction. Shijian Huguqian once passed his own no-care card to Xing Yi. Zhao Yao nodded and said, then it's fine to add an additional condition. It's okay to transfer it, but the second-class no-care card must be downgraded to the third class. With Yu Huiting's character she is still happy. Song He turned to look at Li Baozhen who was beside him and asked with a smile, Li Zhizao, what do you think? Li Baozhen smiled and said, Your Majesty is wise, and he has already made a decision in his heart. He is in the examination school for Zhao Shilang in Shaguan. Song He patted Li Baozhen on the shoulder and joked. The outside world says that you guys who came out of Lizhu Cave, if you praise someone just open your mouth, and if you swear you don't need to write a draft. Zhao Yao said, in this matter our Fulu Street and Taoya Alley are far less powerful than other places in the town, and in our hometown, it seems that men are always inferior to women, and Granny Ma in Xinghua Alley, the widow of the Gu family in Mudping Lane, Li Huai's mother in the westernmost part of the town, and Huang Ernyang who sells wine, a few of them are recognized as first-class masters. An invincible hand. Li Baozhen nodded with a smile. Song He asked curiously, then what would happen if they fought against each other? Zhao Yao said, it is not easy to learn from each other among the top experts. Li Baozhen echoed, each one has its own territory. If you meet and squint it is probably a trick. Ordinary people can't understand the knowledge here. After a moment of silence, the three almost uttered two words in unison, no wonder. No wonder that guy in Mud Bottle Alley is so outstanding and famous in foreign countries. The folk customs of that small town are simple, and now it is as famous as the night banquet of Wei Shanjun of Beiyue. In the carriage, while His Majesty the Emperor was not present, Yu sneaked out a pot of Chongchun Palace Immortal brew and started drinking it. Empress Yu Mian didn't stop her. Yu wiped the corners of her mouth. Empress, I'm going to see Lord Yingguan soon. I'm extremely nervous. I have to take 2 sips to suppress my shock. According to the family hierarchy on the family tree, the girl was actually the elder of Queen Yu Mian, and Yu Mian had to call Yu a little aunt. Yu Mian asked with a soft smile, are you so afraid of Mr. Qin? The last time I accompanied His Majesty the Emperor to the wedding banquet in the capital, Yu Mian had met Qin Pingon. In my impression he was a scholar with a strong character. To say that the immortal spirit of a person who cultivated Taoism on the mountain was not serious. Yu leaned against the wall of the car, hiccups happily and blew a prank on the Empress. The word men is missing. It's not that I am afraid of him alone, all of us are all over the place. I'm afraid anyway if everyone loses face together then no one will lose face. Yu Mian waved his hand to dispel the smell of alcohol, and then lifted the curtain to ventilate so as to avoid the smell of alcohol in the carriage after His Majesty boarded the car. If there is no righteousness, how can I marry someone in the future? Yu imitated the tone of that young hidden official and sighed, the matter of urging marriage is not pleasing. Besides, I'm the elder of the family, the Empress, you are no big or small. Yu Mian couldn't help laughing and patted the girl's head. Yu shouted arrogantly, turned her head, hummed and punched the Empress. Song He smiled and said, Baozhen, when you return home this time, remember to take the time to meet Jian Feng. He is a kiln inspector in Yizhou, and it has not been a day or two since he arrived in Huaihuang County. Entering it is not a problem. You stay and Zhao Yao and I will continue on our way. Jian Feng is the son of an aristocratic family in the capital. He succeeded Chao Gingxin as the inspector of the 4th grade. As a result, when he arrived in the small town, he hit a wall and stepped on a lot of soft nails. The situation was not much better than that of Wu Yuan, the first county magistrate of the small town. Jian Feng was still high-spirited, and he looked down on the idler Chao Jiugui from the bottom of his heart. In fact, in the eyes of discerning people in the center of the Dali Temple, he was far less heavy-hearted. than Chao Gingxin. The Emperor Song he did not care about Jian Feng's actions in the supervision department over the years. Very satisfied, but he couldn't personally teach Jian Feng how to be an official. It just so happened that Li Baozhen was going back to his hometown, so he just let the two confidants chat a few words of confidence. You can find Li Baozhen directly. Li Baozhen bowed his body and clasped his fists, stopped in place and left silently. When Li Baozhen quietly traveled far away in the wind, Xiao Yao retracted his gaze and said softly, "Zhu Lu, assistant officer of the weaving bureau." She disappeared halfway. Song he rubbed his brows and said, "It's useless to investigate things that can make the old coachman vague. Since the other party is very likely to be a monk of the 14th realm, he is destined not to hide things like this in the Confucian temple. There is only that one." Xiao Yao nodded and said, "If it's him, it makes sense. It makes sense that Zhu Lu came from the Li family on Fulu Street and was taken away by Lu Chen." Song he walked slowly with beautiful scenery and smiled. Peach blossoms and plum blossoms share apricot blossoms and pieces fly down to wild people. Xiao Yao smiled and said, "What are the savages in the mountains? The urn is full of freshly brewed Yangchun wine." Song he suddenly asked, "The news of my coming here cannot be concealed from Pai Yun Shan. Xiao Yao, do you think Wei Shanjun will notify Mr. Qin?" Xiao Yao said, "It's hard to say. It's really hard to say. It's not the answer yes or not why it's hard to say but Xiao Yao's identity which makes it difficult for him to answer this question." The emperor smiled but did not embarrass Xiao Shilang. From the village entrance, an old man from the village was chasing piglets. Probably because of seeing Song He and Xiao Yao walking in the middle of the road, the piglets began to screeching everywhere. Song He rubbed his hands and rolled up with his sleeves down. He bowed his head and tried to help stop Piggy who was running all over the road. Xiao Yao followed suit. He opened his arms and followed His Majesty the Emperor to block the road. In the end, the old man felt that he was doing a disservice and endured it. "I still can't hold back. Stop it so blindly. Don't talk about running into the fields. The little pigs are about to run into the river, then you will lose money." The old man was anxious and hurriedly told the two guys to stop working. He was so busy himself that he managed to collect the piglets, and Song He and Xiao Yao were complained. Song He hurriedly shook his hands a few times, and apologized to the old peasant in Big Li Yayan. The old peasant's face improved, and after muttering a few words, His Majesty the Emperor turned his head to look at the Minister of Punishment. This Yenzhou mansion with mountains and mausoleums in its borders, is a typical 10 li different from customs and 100 li different in pronunciation. Fortunately, the old farmer who chased the pigs and the young servant Lang, one understood but could not speak Mandarin, and the other knew local dialect but could not said, it did not delay the communication between the two sides. After going back and forth, the three of them started chatting and there was a group of stinky piglets at their feet. When His Majesty the Emperor caught up with the motorcade and entered the carriage, Yu had already given up the space. Yu Mian was a little surprised. Song He explained it to her and laughed heartily to herself in a good mood. The Fuqing of Muzhou Prefecture is also the seat of Yunzhou Prefecture. A Fengming temple with a plaque on the main courtyard of Yunzhou Road has 3 important guests today, all of whom are from the capital. The 2 plaques are hung together, which means that it is not only a local Taoist temple, but also a Taoist government office under the jurisdiction of the Dali Chongshu Bureau. An old Taoist priest holding a whisk in his hand, looked up at the couplet outside the Taoist temple and said with a smile, "The Taoist temple has doubled in size. It's just the content of the couplet. The momentum is more than a loss for us." A handsome-looking young Taoist teased, Hong Daojing, who is also the Daojing Academy, "This kind of door-to-door view is unacceptable." The old Taoist priest known as Daojing shook his head and said, "My generation of Taoists, we are good at learning from the past and seek truth from facts. Where do you come from? Don't go to the top of the line, you kid. Give Pindao eye medicine on the side of Hall Master Wu." The middle-aged Taoist priest standing in the center narrowed his eyes with a smile, nodded and said, "The content of the couplet is not as chewy as your Taoist temple." The 3 uninvited visitors outside the door, the old Taoist surnamed Hong, are the Taoist priests of the main academy of the capital. The young Taoist priest is Daolu Geliang. He also has a hidden identity, one of the Dali earthly branch monks. They are located in the Xingya office of the Capital Road, and the content of the couplets they hang is indeed not small, and it can be said to be full of ancient meaning. The Songbai Golden Court is a blessed place, and the spiritual ruins of Taoism will be remembered for eternity. Outside the gate of the government office, there is a monument beside the steps. The person who erected the tablet is the leader of the Dali Chongshu Bureau today. He has a series of titles. The three-hole disciple leads the capital Daoist Wu Lingjing, the owner of the Chongshu Pavilion. That is, the middle-aged Taoist priest who is in charge of Taoist affairs in Dali country in name, Wu Lingjing, whose title is Dao Shizheng, and his weight in the Dali court is similar to the Buddhist master Sanzang. Wu Lingjing is not a local Taoist priest of Dali. His ancestral home is in the southeastern boundary of Beipingzu. In the past Qingyuan kingdom, one of the vassals of Dali used to be the abbot of an unknown Taoist temple. Today this middle-aged Taoist priest is the leader of the Dali Chongshu Bureau. In a sense he was not one of the hundreds of thousands of Taoist priests in the entire Dali dynasty, the one with the largest official. Wu Lingjing and the monk who obtained the title of Sanzang Master a few years ago and also abbot the Dali Translation Bureau belong to the same hometown and are from the Qingyuan country. The Taoist priest and the monk were all recommended by Lu Qingfeng, the minister of rites of Luojing in the past. Soon a Taoist priest appeared to inquire. After learning the identities of the three, he was shocked, and hurriedly led him into the Taoist temple, and informed his own Taojing about the matter. In the blink of an eye, in addition to Yunzhou Daojing, there were also two Daolu who happened to be errands and discuss affairs in the Taoist temple. They led a large group of local Dao officials who had been recorded by the court. They held their breaths together, walked lightly and quickly came to meet Wu Lingjing and his party. People. This Yunzhou Dao's Henjiwen is in the same system as the capital Dao's Henjiwen, and it consists of 6 divisions: genealogy, CI lawsuits, green words, palm prints, geography and Qing regulations. However, there are a total of 6 Taoist records in the main courtyards of the states, and there are a total of 7 Taoist officials who receive imperial salaries, and their rank is 1 level lower than that of the capital. In addition, the 6 Daolu are often in charge of a certain Daoguan affairs in an important prefecture and county in a state. The Jingshi Dao's Henjiwen is a Taoist temple with a very small face. It is the kind of place that ordinary people in the capital will miss when they walk by. The Yunzhou Dao's Henjiwen office, which is slightly lower in rank, is located in such a magnificent building. The style is a Taoist temple in a fairyland. Yunzhou Daojing, who is currently in charge of Taoist priests in one state, is a monk in the Jindan realm. Almost all of the dozens of state Daojing offices in Dali are attached to a certain Taoist temple with a long history. The first impression of the Taoist priests when they saw the leader of the Chongshu Bureau was that their Taoist hearts were a little nervous. In officialdom, they were not afraid of the kind of sanctimonious appearance, but they were afraid of this kind of boss who seemed to be approachable with a smile. Wu Lingjing didn't take it seriously. Yunzhou Daojing said to lead them to visit the Taoist temple first, then follow the tour and then drink tea. Just drink tea. Being so easy to talk made the headmaster Daojing and the 2 Daolu feel nervous, guessing that Wu Lingjing, the Dao Shizheng who was in charge of the promotion of Taoist priests in a country, came here without saying hello this time, and he didn't know why. This middle-aged Taoist priest who habitually squinted to see people and things, went up the mountain to practice very late, and he did not have a few years of Dao age. When he was a common man before, Wu Lingjing was a veritable bookworm. He liked to read at night with the lights on. In addition, he read a lot in those years, so he accidentally hurt his eyes so that his vision was blurred when he looked at everything, so he habitually squinted. Wu Lingjing's habit after cultivating the Tao has not been able to change. After going back and forth, rumors are spread, and the owner of the Chongshu Bureau, Wu, has the nickname of the Smiling Tiger in the capital. It is said that it was first spread from the alleys of the Yiyun Tower, and it is also said that it was given by the old Xianxia of the Zhao family in Tianshui. Wu Lingjing was also quite helpless about this. He didn't expect that, he was just out of curiosity and fascination. He went to the alley but was unable to enter. He was stopped at the alley and chatted with the old Yuan Ing Lu Jia after a few words, and then with the young man who was often struck by lightning when he went out. He kindly gave some guidance on his practice, and in the end he got such a nickname for nothing. As for Wu Lingjing's trip to Beijing this time, he was invited by Mr. Yuan from the Qin Tianjian, saying that he wanted to introduce a friend to him. The other party's identity was special and it was not suitable for him to appear in the capital of Dali. Wu Lingjing made an appointment with Mr. Yuan in Yunzhou. Lu Zijuan? Wu Lingjing was in a complicated mood. The name changed from Longzhou to Chuzhou stems from the theory of constellation separation. It was suggested by the Qin Tianjian in the capital. A series of brand new county government names, Xindu Jinyun Wui Wenqing etc., were also helped by this Mr. Yuan. An Yuan Tianfeng, who was in a certain place in Yenzhou Prefecture at the moment, suggested that an old Confucian scholar with no fame should donate money to build a Kuixing pavilion in the southeast corner of the Confucian temple in their county to gather purple energy. A young scholar beside Yuan Tianfeng was non-committal about this, as if to say that this was a good move, but it was still not the best. In a village school at the foot of the mountain, the teacher was teaching a class and he talked to the children about the truth of the book, and then explained it to the children in a more easy-to-understand vernacular. Bringing off your achievements and showing off your articles are all based on external things. No matter how arrogant you are, you will still bow your head when you see people. You are kind, and even if you don't know a word, you are not afraid of ghosts in the middle of the night. The place is upright and upright. Outside the school, a group of foreigners with unfamiliar faces came, standing under the eaves outside the window, and did not make a sound to disturb the teacher's lecture. In addition, there are two old masters who are teaching in Wuxia village. They heard the noise in the village and said that 3 carriages were coming, and they were very imposing. I was really curious about the identity of the foreigners, so I made an appointment to come here to find out. 2 elderly masters, one is the master of Wuxia village school, the old boy Feng Yuanting, and the other is Han Kuang, whose word is Yunqing. Now he is a private school teacher for the richest family in the village. The old man has no fame, but he has taught several students who have passed the exam. After all, today's Dali dynasty, especially the Juran in the north, is really not ordinary gold. The 2 old masters whispered while looking at the group of people not far from the corner of their eyes. Lao Tongxing said in a low voice, "Brother Han, at first glance they are officials, right or not?" Han Yu had seen the big world and nodded. The official is not small. The old master then added a jargon. Most of them are from an aristocratic family and have experience in the officialdom. Maybe in a few years they will go to the 6 yamen in the capital to get an official position, or go to work in a large Jiangyi county, and at the same time have a Qingmei official position such as a test school clerk or a secretary for provincial test orthography. Feng Yuanting was stunned when he heard the words. Wouldn't it be the county magistrate who started in the future? The Dali dynasty was drawn on a line, just with Chuzhou as the boundary. The north of Chuzhou belonged to the boss Li, the south of Chuzhou and the north of Dadu belonged to the new Dali. Then being an official in Yunzhou and the north is a bit higher than serving in the south, especially when Dali accompanies the vassal states around the capital Luojing. It's just a break from get out of class, not school yet. Qin Pingon walked out of the school, smiled and bowed his hands. Song He's was said, Song He has met Mr. Qin. Song He. The 2 old masters were stunned for a moment when they heard the words. Then they looked at each other and smiled. They both thought it was very interesting. Okay, why did the young man take such a name? It's a bit big. The content of the chapters in the web version is slow. Please download the latest content of the iRead app. Please exit the transcoding page. Please download the latest chapter of the iRead app. The new provides you with the fastest sword to update. The first 1041 chapters is a good name for free. Please remember this book's first domain name. Mobile version reading website. WAP. Sword of Coming Chapter 1042. The village school is by the water. There is a plum tree in the ancient stream. People are standing next to the tree at the foot of the cloud. The sound of the water and the color of the plum blossoms, all race to see you. There are thousands of green bamboos in the mountains. When night falls it will be a different scenery. The flowing water and bright moonlight melt into a stream of snow. Under the eaves of the school, Yu Mian gave 1,000 blessings and Yi didn't seem to get out of the way anymore. Qin Pingon nodded in greeting with them, then cupped his fists with his 2 colleagues and said with a smile, Mr. Qing, Mr. Feng, I made the 2 seniors laugh and I teach in the hall. If there is something wrong with this junior, I hope you can give me some advice. There were outsiders present and the 2 masters nodded solemnly. After listening to the lecture for half an hour here, this old record is still the same as it is. He is young and has a big tone. Oh, a teacher who has never been gilded in the county school, dare to say anything about his achievements and show off his articles. In order to attract Meng Tong to earn a little more money, there are many tricks and it is worthy to be an upright person. It seems that in order to be able to make a good impression in front of this group of foreigners, I really want to go out and don't have any shame. The governor of Yunzhou, Pei Tong, and the general of Yunzhou, Chu Liang, each saluted silently, and they did not rush to report their identities. The two frontier officials each had their own thoughts and what Pei Tong thought in his heart. The man in front of him was the close disciple of Wen Xing, the national teacher Cui Yu, and the younger brother of Mr. Qi from Xianxia Academy. The military general Chu Liang was thinking. The gentle and elegant teacher in front of him, with a blue shirt, long coat and cloth shoes, is really the last hidden official of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, the latest person to engrave the word Ping? Seeing that guy squinted at him with a half-smile, Zhao Yao was a little helpless. You can talk to anyone but you care about me, so you hold grudges like that? Didn't you just make a harmless joke when you were in the capital of Dali? Seeing that the other party didn't intend to let him go, Zhao Shilang had to bite the bullet and softly called, "Little Master Uncle." Seeing that Qin Pingon showed a relieved look of, "The elders in the family see the future," Zhao Yao sighed, "You are of high seniority, so bear with you." During the quarter-hour break after class, the Mengtong children were a little restrained because there were such a large group of outsiders and they were all rich. The children were not as noisy as usual and they were timid. While pretending to flip through the book, they looked at the fresh scene outside the window. The boys paid more attention to the scar on Chu Liang's neck, while the girls secretly observed the clothes of the two women. Qin Pingon led everyone to the lobby of his residence to take a seat. An old table of the 8 immortals was bought with money from the villagers, and Zhao Xuxia was asked to make tea to entertain guests. After Qin Pingon introduced the identity of this disciple to Song He, apologetically he said, "You guys came a little earlier and it's not time to pick Mingqian tea. These are the grain rain teas from last year and it will be a little bit." The master Han Yu and Tong Xing Feng Yuanting were reluctant to leave too early, and just heard Qin Jie's active invitation. Ningji didn't dare to disturb the gentleman's hospitality, but just stood by the stone-carved sundial in the drying field. The two disciples, Zhao Xuxia is somewhat similar to the kind of disciples who are in need to serve them and accompany them. Ningji, however, is a serious student who has recently been transferred to a village school, just like Meng Tong. Qin Pingon beckoned to Ningji. Ningji trotted into the room. Qin Pingon said with a smile, "It's a student I just accepted, and Ning Ning, auspicious, it's a good name." Ningji smiled and bowed to everyone. Everyone in the room paid more attention to this dark boy named Ningji. Only Zhao Yu looked at Zhao Xuxia, who was taciturn but did not give off the impression of being withdrawn. Because there were two teachers from neighboring villages, the host and guest didn't talk much about business. Qin Pingon apologized after drinking a bowl of tea and he had to go to class. He took Ningji out of the house and asked Zhao Xuxia to stay. Chat with guests. After Qin Pingon left, Song He took the initiative to ask the two old masters about the school in Wuxia village. On the side of Pirchinji, the two old men still put on airs, but on the side of these foreigners who can't figure out the details, the two masters are not so casual, especially the man surnamed Song, who is vaguely headed. It seems that he has a few kilograms of official energy, so when he asks and answers, it is like being asked about his homework by his husband. Yu Mian tugged at the corner of His Majesty's clothes under the table, and Song He stopped talking and turned to ask about gossip about farming time and local folklore. After the school was over today, the two old masters had already resigned and were far away from the school. Feng Yuanting tugged at the collar of his Confucian shirt, exhaled and said tentatively, "The surname Song is not a clerk in the prefecture. The official, right?" Han Yu pretended to be calm and smiled and looked back at the direction of the school. It is hard to say how big an official is, but one thing is certain, this person must be from a noble family from the north. Feng Yuanting couldn't help but wonder how these children of aristocratic families knew Qinji. Han Yu thought for a moment and said that the person might be a noble person with old traces. Feng Yuanting muttered, "Good boy, it's really lucky to step on shit." Qin Pingon was the host, so he naturally sat on the main seat facing the door. Song and Yu Mian sat on a bench opposite Pei Tong, Chu Liang and Yu Yu. Zhao Xuxia and Ningji sat opposite their respective masters, and Zhao Shilang, who was the same generation as them, sat next to Zhao Xuxia, relatively close to Yu Yu on the other side of the table. After a few greetings, when it was time to eat, Qin Pingon asked with a smile, "Home-cooked food, are you used to eating it? In the mountains and fields, the year-round hard work is inevitably spicy and salty. I have similar tastes and it's nothing. Do as the locals do. If you're not used to it, there's nothing you can do." Here is Qin Pingon, an ordinary master, but he didn't plan to make an exception for this group of people and moved to Luapa Mountain to entertain guests. Song He Wenyan immediately looked at the queen beside her. She nodded with a smile and Song He said, "Yes, we are all fine." Qin Pingon stood up. "Then I'll cook a few small dishes myself. Maybe I'm not good at craftsmanship, please forgive me." Seeing this scene, Zhao Yao was a little settled. Chu Liang was a rude man and didn't think there was anything wrong. Pei Tong was a careful person and noticed that Qin Pingon seemed to have changed a bit, and there was no such indifference that the two sides were doing business and seeing off guests after speaking. It didn't take long for Zhao Xuxia and Ning Ji, who helped out, to bring the dishes to the table. It's hard to say that they were full of color and flavor. Among them, several plates of seasonal vegetables looked light. Qin Pingon took off his apron in the kitchen. Ning Ji brought 2 kinds of wine, soil burning and glutinous rice. Yu carefully looked at the face of the young hidden official. She said with her conscience that she would just drink some glutinous rice wine. Qin Pingon picked up the wine bowl and said with a smile, "It's all optional. I'll do one first." Song He also finished drinking a bowl of soil burnt, but his face flushed with choking, and he quickly turned his head to cover his mouth. Pei Tong and Chu Liang wanted to say something, but they still held back. For some reason, when they arrived at the school and met the teacher, they were like, leaving the country and officialdom of Dali. Qin Pingon didn't say anything and took the lead in picking up chopsticks and persuading everyone to eat. Song Hexian explained why he came here, so that Hushin Gaojiu and Yu Huiting could choose dishes out, so that Qin Pingon would not misunderstand them. Qin Pingon smiled, listened patiently and nodded occasionally. Song He hesitated for a moment but said straight to the point, "Mr. Qin, I took the liberty to come here this time and I still want to persuade me. I hope that Mr. Qin can reconsider the matter at the wedding banquet in Beijing last time." Qin Pingon took a chopstick of the dish, chewed it slowly, nodded and said, "From today onwards I will consider it carefully." Song He's face was full of surprise and he was ready to eat a closed door today. He never thought that he could eat Mr. Chen's home-cooked food, drink at the same table, and even didn't directly reject his proposal. You must know that the last time Qin Pingon brought a stranger into the palace, and the vision was full of visions, but the Daliqin Tianjian was very frightened. Song He misunderstood that Qin Pingon and Dali Song's family had completely broken up, so that during this period of time, it seemed that the Empress Dowager Nanzhuang, who was a little guilty, was on his side or on his daughter-in-law Yumian's side. Are too polite. The mother-in-law who is still in charge. After a pause, Qin Pingon continued, "The reason for the hesitation before, aside from some personal grievances and old accounts, must be settled first, and the main reason is that Brother Cui once said some serious things to me and he said it very directly. It's just a few words to the effect that I am not suitable to be the national teacher of Dali at all, because he thinks that I am a layman who is cocooning himself and has only a self-confessed he may. Am not qualified to talk about opening up the situation or creating a new atmosphere. I also said that I was on the side of the Great Wall of Sword Qi. Array formation, so my role in the Great Wall of Sword Qi is just the icing on the cake. It is not a help in the snow. If he is in the same position to do the same thing, then my position in the Summer Palace, that is, the role of so-and-so, is indeed there. It's better, but it doesn't matter if it doesn't, it just doesn't matter." As soon as these words were thrown out by Qin Pingon, it was probably because Qin Pingon was reciting Cui Yes words, or because the words Sword Qi Great Wall and Summer Palace weighed heavily on everyone's heart. Therefore, whether it is Emperor Song He or Pei Tong, Chu Liang and other officials of the frontier who aspired to the title of Shangzhou Kingdom and Patrol Envoy, they all held their breath subconsciously and straightened their backs. Qin Pingon smiled to himself and said, "The truth is such a truth, but I think it's okay to keep my business. It's not too bad to be entrusted by others and keep the promise. There are no stupid people here today except for the young Ning Ji, who is ignorant of the world. As a senior brother, if you say that you are not good, then it is not good. Don't make any achievements and be stubborn with me, but this is between brothers and sisters. My little junior brother, if something happens in the future, I still have to be on top. Saying that you can't do it is worth my Cui Yes words. The others are even less capable. Those in the Dali dynasty who think they can't do it and those who think they can't do it are actually not okay." Therefore, when Qin Pingon went to the capital of Dali last time, in addition to solving the shards of the porcelain, he just wanted to see with his own eyes whether senior brother Cui had arranged a candidate for the next national teacher, such as Zhao Yao. After a meal of wine and dinner, it was the Queen Yu Mian who took the initiative to clean up the dishes and Yu Yu, who felt that she had to act on the side of the young hermit. After the dinner table, Qin Pingon invited the emperor and the 2 local officials in charge of the military and political affairs of a prefecture, and of course the nephew Zhao Yao, to sit in his study and chat with each other over tea. It was only after a chat that I learned that the grandfather and father of the prefect Pei Tong were originally from the Jingqing Old Xianxia Academy, where Qi Jingchun served as the mountain chief. Of course, it has now been changed to the Chunshan Academy sponsored by the government. Seeing that his colleague Inspector Pei was chatting and laughing with the young hidden official, Chu Liang was a little anxious, and after thinking about it, there was really nothing close to Chen Ping's. Yu Mian stood at the door of the side room, bent his fingers and knocked gently on the door. Qin Pingon, who was sitting on the edge of the bed, turned his head and shouted with a smile, "You bring a bench in." Qin Pingon crossed Erlang's legs and hugged his knees with his hands. When he spoke, his feet were already on the ground. There were only 2 official hat seats in the house, and Qin Pingon and His Majesty the Emperor simply gave it to Pei Tong and Chu Liang, and the 2 of them sat on the edge of the bed. Chu Liang wanted to give up the seats to the Empress and Yu Yu, but was stopped by Pei Tong's eyes, and he was very particular about who would sit in the chair with your warm. What a system! Yu Yu moved a bench beside the 8 Immortals table into the house and sat side by side with the Empress. Song He, who had guessed what he was thinking, shook his head, indicating that Yu Mian's matter could be postponed. It was rare for the Empress to insist on her own opinion. Her eyes were firm. Song He sighed softly and had no choice but to nod her head. Yu Mian said, "There is something I have to apologize to Mr. Qin and then ask Mr. to help." Qin Pingon smiled and said, "But it doesn't matter." Yu Mian took out the bracelet, which was strung with rhinoceros beads, from his sleeve. Yu Yu hurriedly grabbed it, got up and handed it to Lord Yingguan. Qin Pingon took the bracelet and said, "A few of them were indeed banned by Xiao Mo's swordsmanship. When I look back, I will ask him to remove the ban, and then let Wei Shanjun help return the items to the Lord." Yu Mian breathed a sigh of relief and thanked Mr. Qin. Song He was even more relieved. That confused account, Mr. Chen's so-called obsolete account, even if it has been uncovered? Every family has a scripture that is difficult to read, and there are many things that are really difficult for an honest official to do housework. Even if he is the honor of the 95, the king of a country in the Dali dynasty, he is still the son of the Queen Mother Nanzhang after all. Since Qin Pingon mentioned Wei Bo, Song He took advantage of the situation to chat about the 5 mountains Fengzheng. Qin Pingon didn't say more details, but Yu laughed and joked, "Just look at Wei Shanjun's true face once, and you will understand why the men on the mountain like to look at the mirror." Pei Tong just pretended he didn't understand the banter of the Yu family girl. After all, the Empress was in the house. Chu Liang didn't have so many contortions and grinned on the spot. Out of the corner of his eyes he saw Pei Shishir sitting there looking at his nose and heart, and he was a little embarrassed. The general hurriedly shifted his gaze a little. Seeing that the young hidden official and His Majesty the Emperor were laughing, Chu Liang giggled in a foolish way. They were all great gentlemen. "Lord Chief Inspector, why are you pretending to be a gentleman here? Knife and pen officials don't care how big the official hat on the head is. It is not as refreshing as those who really use knives on horseback." Zhao Xuxia and Ning Ji were busy washing dishes and chopsticks in the kitchen. The boy lowered his voice and asked cautiously, "Brother Zhao, those people?" Zhao Xuxia smiled indifferently and said, "You guessed right, it is His Majesty the Emperor and the Empress. As for the 2 officials beside them, they are probably Inspector Pei and General Chu from Yunzhou." The young man smiled and said, "Senior Brother Zhao, does this mean that there is a great scholar in the book and there is no white ding in the relationship?" Zhao Xuxia laughed dumbly. Ning Ji immediately changed his tune and said, "No sir, since he has distant relatives in the mountains he is even more so. I have no time in my heart, and Qingchuan is like this." Zhao Xuxia couldn't help but teased, "Ning Ji, he is very good at learning and applying now. The younger brother must think that you are a piece of material that can be made. It is estimated that he will inevitably teach you some unique skills of Luopa Mountain in the future." Ning Ji stretched out his palm, which was covered in sweat. Zhao Xuxia smiled and said, "I've seen Headmaster Lu, so you don't have to be so nervous." Ning Ji pondered a little and felt that Zhao Shuxia's statement was indeed reasonable. Ning Ji asked curiously, "Senior Brother Cui is obviously Mr. S' first student, so why do you call him Junior Brother and Senior Sister Pei?" Zhao Xuxia shook his head and said, "I don't know, the younger brother seems to be unwilling to be a senior when he first met the master." He insisted that senior sister Pei call him junior senior sister, so he called senior sister Pei and senior sister Pei. The spring breeze is full of mountains and can't be closed. The sunset and the moon rise, birds fly on the eaves, clouds come out of the windows, and the wind passes for the king to make a sound of pine. In the lonely mountain in the courtyard of the old cook, Xiago was sitting on the steps, watching Xiao Imo knitting a bamboo dustpan with Mr. Zhu. She felt that Xiao Imo, who was focused on doing things, looked in a mess. She swallowed her saliva and held back. With the urge to be hungry, he stretched out his hand and rubbed the mink hat on his head. He was in high spirits and without any reason he said, "Little Imo, last time I left Luapa Mountain without authorization, you didn't worry about me, let me do things by myself, I'm very happy." Xiao Imo hesitated for a moment but said honestly, "It was the young master who told me not to follow you." Zhou Xian lowered his head and rolled his eyes. It's hard to teach an uneducated elm knot. You Xiaomo are in the same path as men and women. Anyone who has 1/10 of his own swordsmanship skills will not be stupid enough to tell the truth. Xiago seemed to be still elated, his arms crossed his chest, raised his head high and said loudly, "I don't care about this as long as you don't follow me, I'll be happy." Xiao Imo said, "Young master persuaded me like this and I think it makes some sense. It's all true." Xiago twitched his nose and said in a low voice, Xiao Imo, if you say that, I'll be happier." Zhu Xian shook his head and continued to weave the bamboo dustpan skillfully. "Don't look at this pair of men and women, one is older than the other, more than 10,000 years old. In fact, among the flowers of love between men and women they are just two chicks. One has to raise his voice to cover up his loss. He says he doesn't care about this, but can he ignore it in his heart? The other one can't hear it at all. Is it a fool? It's a good match, in fact it's quite right." Xiago's eyes were sharp and he wondered, "Mr. Zhu, what do you have different opinions? Who are we and who? Let's hear it." Zhu Xian smiled and said, "No problem, I just think it's disgusting that you are so affectionate with me in my yard." Xiaomo's face. Xiago laughed and shook his shoulders. She was not ashamed but proud of the old cook's evaluation. "Hey, I'm sick to death." Zhu Xian didn't care about the sable-cap girl but reminded Xiao Imo, "Xiao Imo, you just look young, you are a lot of age, take it easy, don't let the old house catch fire." Xiao Imo became more and more embarrassed. What was this all about? Xiago boxing palm. Mr. Zhu speaks with knowledge, and it is not pleasing to the ear at first, but in fact every word is in the heart. Our family is a good place. The more I stay the more comfortable I feel. I feel very comfortable every day. It's not that the family doesn't enter the house and they don't leave. Xiago asked, "Mr. Zhu, do you think I have a chance of winning a battle with that Chenjuolio?" Zhu Xian asked back with a smile, "Are you working hard?" Xiago grinned and said, "The visitor is a guest, what are you trying to do? Just learn from each other." Zhu Xian said, "There is no chance of winning." Xiago asked, "How about desperately?" Zhu Xian said, "There is no chance of winning." Xiago's eyes resented, "What nonsense?" Zhu Xian smiled and said, "You talk nonsense first." Xiago was not even angry and nodded to himself, "It seems that I have to practice swords well." First there was Lu Yen, whose Taoist name was Chunyang, and then there was the scholarly Xixing, and now there was another Chenjuolio who made a similar Buddhist vow to prove Taoism. Well, the masters of Confucianism, Buddhism and Taoism are all complete. Xiao Imo asked, "Mr. Zhu, will your son serve as Dali's new national teacher?" The movement of the Yenzhou prefecture in Yunzhou could not be concealed from Xiao Imo in Luopao Mountain. Zhu Xian stopped his movements and thought for a while, "Yes." Xiao Imo wondered, "Why?" Zhu Xian smiled and said, "Young master always likes to make things difficult for himself." "Thank you, dog, for slandering endlessly. What kind of answer is this?" Gao Jun walked alone to this point, hesitating for a while, but he still walked into the yard. He was familiar with the door and the road, so he picked a bamboo chair and sat not far from Zhu Xian. Zhu Xian greeted her with a smile and nodded, continuing the previous topic. "If you want to be a good person, don't you just need to make yourself difficult all the time?" Xiao Imo nodded and said, "When you hear people's kindness, you raise your suspicions, and when you listen to people's evil, you believe them. This is full of murderous intentions. When such murderous intentions are combined, the good thoughts will retreat. That's why the goodness and the evil are not done, so it is so good and difficult." Zhu Xian nodded and said, "It's easier to know than to do it. The difficulty is that if you really want to make a certain truth, You need to set up too many other truths next to it and tear down many of the original truths. It's more difficult to go back and forth. Xiego hurriedly praised, Xiao, you are indeed someone who has heard Buddhist teachings with your own ears. Xiao said helplessly, it used to be only a passing ear but it never came to my heart. Looking back now it's really a pity. Gao Jun's eyelids trembled. To say that the girl with the mink hat is very likely to be nonsense. But that Mr. Mo, who made an excellent impression on anyone, was never the kind of serious scholar who spoke big words. Then Zhou Xian asked a strange question. Xiaomo Monsieur Master Gao, do you like to study arithmetic? Xiaomo said, I can't talk about liking, I'm following the young master, I'm familiar with it, I have a rough understanding but am still a layman. It was rare for Xiego to be silent, and she was least interested in arithmetic because of the 3 teachings in hundreds of schools. In fact, Qi practitioners on the mountain more or less, almost cannot get around the knowledge of arithmetic. But Xiego may be one of the few exceptions. As for swordsmanship, it is enough to practice swordsmanship with your eyes closed and you don't need to turn over a book. Gao Jun said, there are similar courses in the sect, but I usually only occasionally study arithmetic and hexagrams. Zhu Lian said indifferently, maybe all free transfers are in pursuit of the greatest common divisor. Xiaomo was thoughtful. Xiego glanced at Xiaomo and she pretended to be thoughtful. Gao Jun couldn't help but ask a question that had been in his heart for a long time. This question, since the first day she left Lotus Root Blessed Land, climbed Luo Pao Mountain, and learned that the old cook's name was Zhu Lian, she wanted to get one. The definitive answer. Zhu Lian, are you really Zhu Lian? Xiego couldn't help laughing out loud. Can you ask such a silly question? Zhu Lian asked back. Why does sect leader Gao ask this question? Gao Jun's pretty face turned slightly red but he hesitated. It turned out that in the secret library of the Hushan sect of Songlai country, there was a portrait of a certain person, and there were more than one portraits, all of them were the hands of the senior women of the Hushan sect, and they were all recognized as great beauties by the Hushan sect. The noble son Zhu Lian, the most exiled immortal, is the most talented in the world and his style is unparalleled and unmatched. In addition, this martial madman was the #1 person in the world before Ding Ying of the demon sect, and the history is not too long so the Hushan faction often talked about Zhu Lian. Zhu Lian smiled and said, if there is no accident I should be the Zhu Lian mentioned by sect leader Gao. Gao Jun glanced at the old cook. Zhu Lian smiled and said, Zhu Yan recites the mirror and the flower recites the tree. Since ancient times old age is not only a woman, but it is not only a woman which has disappointed sect master Gao. Gao Jun let out a faint sigh. He only hated that he was born 100 years late, and that he was not able to see the Zhu Lang's face, who is said to be difficult to describe in 1,100 portraits in the world. It is rumored in the Jianghu that in the peak battle of Nanyuan Kingdom's capital in the past, Zhu Lian, the #1 in the world, and the rest of the 9 people in the world met in the sky and the snow. The 9 did not dare to enter the city alone but came together. On the top of the wall, someone was sitting cross-legged with one hand supporting his cheek and wearing a silver lotus crown. The sky and the earth were as white as a glass world, and when the person slowly got up, the 2 female masters among the 9 people had already been secretly hurt before they could make a move. Gao Jun grew up in the Hushan school listening to a lot of similar story, and most of the Jianghu women like her are like this, no exception. Within 100 years of Ding Ying becoming the world's #1 river and lake, I felt that what happened to Zhu Lian must be exaggerated, and some thought it was well deserved. There are different opinions, often quarreling over a character who has been away from the world for more than 100 years, women and men. Noisy women will quarrel with women. Zhu Lian, who just lowered his head to weave baskets, suddenly raised his head and said with an angry smile, Xiaomo, take care of your family, Monsieur. Xiaomo was at a loss and saw Xiego, who was the culprit, pretending to be an idiot, and seeing that Gao Jun again, she looked at Zhu Lian blankly with a shocked look on her face and even a bit frightened. Seeing that Xiego couldn't hide it from Xiaomo, he stretched out his hand to cover his mouth and asked for credit. Xiaomo, I saw Mr. Zhu's true appearance last time, but I won't be as rude as the headmaster Gao. Xiaomo smiled angrily, don't withdraw the sword intent quickly. Xiego pouted and put away the sword intent that washed away Zhu Lian's face, covering his face like rain. Zhu Lian smiled and said, Sect Master Gao, during the first heavy snowfall in the capital of Nanyuan Kingdom this year, I will have a fight with my son. If Sect Master Gao is free, he can watch the battle from the sidelines. Gao Jun was speechless. Xiego coughed a few times and reminded, Headmaster Gao, Master, wake up. Gao Jun stood up silently. She didn't say goodbye to Zhou Xian, she just left the yard. Xiego was still there and sighed to himself. If Luopa Mountain is willing to hold Jingguo Shuyu, how much fairy money will be earned? Xiego asked softly, Little Imo, is there any female cultivator of the 14th realm who has a feud with Luopa Mountain? When the time comes, Mr. Zhu will be able to go into action. After a few points, once you reveal your face, you only need to stop there, and it is guaranteed that it will work better than anything else. Xiao Mo glared at him and said, Mr. Zhu is generous, don't care about this kind of joke with you. You should also be more interesting, don't be too aggressive. Xiego sighed and asked with a hippie smile, Have you ever seen Mr. Zhu's face before, Shanjuchen? Julian smiled and shook his head. However, Xiao Mo knew a secret story that Wei Shanjun heard, but he didn't reveal the truth on Xiego's side, lest she spread it out on the mountain. Xiego asked, Why did you think of asking Qin Shanju about boxing? Julian said, For the young master it may be just stretching the muscles and bones. For me, I have to go all out. Outside of my status, there are 2 types of boxing, and the jade of his mountain can attack the stone. On the other side of the door, 2 people tiptoed away. Guizhujio slapped his fist. The old cook's appearance is not bad compared to the master, the difference is only a tiny bit. Pai Dian followed the white-haired boy next to the leader of the Guo Alliance with a big mouth. No matter how good the hidden official ancestor was, it would be a bit unconscionable to say that he could compete with the guy in the hospital in terms of appearance. Do not export. Dipped in the light, I accidentally saw the face of the old cook tonight. The white-haired boy waving his sleeves, TSK amazed. If the world talks about Taoism and asks boxing, it is better than the face. Don't say that self-proclaimed second, no one dares to call himself first. I am afraid that Julien calls himself first, and no one dares to call himself second. Gao Jun's mood was extremely complicated. When she walked to the door of her house, she still didn't push the door and walked all the way to Bayou Square at the top of Jisa Peak. It's not that she, a cultivator, would fall in love with Julien at first sight. She's just a man and she is indeed too good-looking. It's not reasonable at all. She put away her many thoughts and gradually became clear about her Taoism. Gao Jun laughed. Although the rivers and lakes were separated by 100 years, she could still meet fellow villagers in a foreign land. Involuntarily, Gao Jun slapped the white jade railing heavily and muttered to himself. Seeing this face, one flower is full of spring. The content of the chapters in the web version is slow. Please download the latest content of the iRead app. Please exit the transcoding page. Please download the latest chapter of the iRead app. ABC provides you with the fastest sword to update. The first 1042 chapters are free. // Please remember this book's first domain name. Mobile version reading website. WAP.